Welcome back to another small council. There's some lovely people here today to talk about the Winds of Winter, episode 10 of season 6 of Game of Thrones. Can't wait to talk about this. You guys, this was a fantastic freaking episode. Alright, let's get to some introductions. I'm James Johnson. I'll be your host. Tonight we have the magnificent CharlieInWesteros. He'll be guiding us tonight. Charlie, say some hi and give us some glass candles. 0 out of 10. How good was this episode?
Hello, folks. CharlieInWesteros. I can't talk. CharlieInWesteros here, as always, and always unable to speak. Glass candles. So in my own review, I gave it 9.5 out of 10, but clearly that upset a lot of people because I also said it was a perfect episode. So I will rectify myself just slightly, and I'll say it was an almost perfect episode, and I'll give it a 9.8 out of 10 glass candles. That is all.
That's fantastic, Charlie. Fantastic. And I'd put it pretty far up. I think that's about what I'd agree with. Claire, what'd you think about tonight? And say hi. It's good to have you, Claire, by the way. Don't get to have you very often. I love having you.
Hi, thanks, James. I'm going to say 10. I wasn't sure I'd be able to give a perfect score, to be honest, after episode 9. But this was the best finale in the whole show, I think. If you look at all the other finales, I think this was hands down the best one. So as a TV spectacular, I would say definitely 10 candles from me.
Lovely. I was on the edge of my fucking seat the whole time. Honestly, I'm really bad at this number thing. Mama?
Can't agree more. I'm giving it a solid 10. Best. I might say it might be the best episode ever, despite the battle scenes being magnificent. Thought it was tight. Thought it was terse. I thought it covered a lot of things, maybe a little too quickly for us that wanted to savor some things in the books. But boy, did they nail it. They nailed every single thing. 10 out of 10 all the way.
Maester Payne?
Absolutely, I would give it a 10. Also, hi, I'm glad to be back. Sorry, I apologize to all you guys for missing the last, I think it was 3. But happy to be here. Definitely a 10. Best episode I've ever seen of the show. They nailed pretty much everything.
Lovely. I'm start calling you Maester Giant Payne. Nico?
Hi everyone, and this time I'm tuning in from amazing Asiago Observatory. What I want to say about this episode, it's a perfect 10, no doubt about it. And that's it.
This is a fucking fantastic episode. So goddamn dense, and an hour and a half? That's insane. It's pretty much confirmed now that we're going to get between 10 and 15 episodes, and there's repeated talk of 7 episodes next season, 60 season after that, which, considering that we got an hour and a half episode this season, who knows what the fuck they're going to be doing with those 7 and 6. And I definitely feel like the last one's going to be at least 2 really long episodes. All right, so there's really nothing to say regarding dislikes about this episode. The Varys switch was excusable in the idea that he transported from one location to another. To me, completely fine. I did not know, but because there were ships there with the Tyrell and the other flag, that to me justified it. The weird thing about it to me was that Dany and Varys haven't met, have they? That was the weird thing about it. They've never met.
They have.
So I guess he just justifies that he came over with the Martell and Tyrell ships and swore their allegiance, and hi, I'm Varys, we swear our allegiance. But anyway, great fucking episode. No complaints. Anybody got likes and dislikes they want to do? Yes, Nico, why don't you go? Likes and dislikes.
First, dislikes. It's not a major dislike or anything, but I think that Dario and Dany's scene was just too long, and I wanted to be done with it. I don't know. I think they could have done it quickly, but that's it. For the likes, everything else. Honestly, everything else. I have no beef with this episode, and I think you will all agree with me.
I think that scene was about Dany, conclusive evidence that Dany has no idea what she wants, and that's going to be the issue. Maester Payne, some likes and dislikes?
Dislikes the fact that Ramsey was the one that fucking killed Woon Woon. That's just ridiculous. I can't believe that. That's the worst part about it. Everything else, like Nico said, perfect. Love it.
Are you talking about the last 2 episodes?
Moving too quickly, or the distance between Meereen and Dorne varies. So that's a joke, by the way.
And you weren't here last week, so you're talking about both episodes. Am I correct?
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry.
That's cool. You weren't here.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, these 2 episodes are some of the best television ever.
Episodes is that? Yeah, absolutely.
Hell yeah, Mama.
My only dislikes are simply because they're moving so fast, and I've said it before, I would have loved to have savored some of those scenes a little longer, but that's really not a dislike. I think my favorite part of this was the music. I thought it was like a symphony that we were brought in with just an instrument or two, and it just kept building this funereal, solemn, oppressive, claustrophobic kind of situation, which was mirrored in the scenes that took us below into some claustrophobic dungeons. The piano beginning, we gradually get the organ that comes in, then we get swelling music. I thought, this guy is a master. I mean, he is a maestro.
Wonderful. And that guy, there's an interview with him. I meant to save the link. I've got a lot of links below the video if anybody wants to take a look at them. But the guy said that they had not used an organ before. So they were playing with piano and switched to organ and decided that was the one to go with. And there's a part where there's 2 boys singing, and they intentionally go off note together back and forth. Anyway, there's a great interview. You should check it out. Clare Gray, some likes and dislikes.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, the main like for me is everything to do with the sept and leading up to it. I'd completely echo what you just said, James and LaDonna, about the music and the specific. I've listened to it back a few times and I get goosebumps every single time, and it's the discord in the tempo, and it happens particularly. It gets you just at the, I call it the little birdage when that happens. That's exactly when the music kind of changes. Everything about that, which I know we'll get into. The dislikes I would qualify by saying only, not really dislikes, just lesser favourable areas of the episode, which would be, I think Dawn. Just because I mean, there's a lot about Dawn that I liked actually this episode, but Dawn I would say is weaker just because the Sand Snakes were there and just because it reminded me of how disappointing they've been so far. So I would say that's probably a dislike. And I like the Frey pie and Arya. It just left me asking a few irritating book purist questions. That's all I would say. So, but apart from those, and I would say minor, it was a superb episode.
Fucking lovely. In hindsight, I mean, it was one of the writers convinced David and Dan to do Dorne. They were going to actually leave it out. That doesn't justify what happened. And to me, the fight scenes, serendipitousness, and choreography was what killed it. But this episode, they got shut the fuck down, which was fun. Charlie, likes and dislikes. And we may have lost him for a split second.
Hey, folks, can you hear me?
We can now. Go.
Hello. Okay, awesome. Sorry, my connection is a bit bad. Likes and dislikes. I think you all touched on most of the fantastic points of this episode. I think really I have to only add on one point, and that was a very minor thing, but because I am a bit of an amateur cosplayer, I think the costumes this episode were fantastic, and I really got to mention not only Marjorie Tyrell's, Olenna Tyrell's and Dorne, Dany's, but especially Cersei's was pretty epic. Coupled with the music that you all mentioned, I think it really set the tone for her character and her new persona, if you will. In terms of dislikes, I think LaDonna touched on the pacing just a little bit in some ways. I think I would have liked to see things paced out a bit better. In a weird way, I would have almost loved it if they made Game of Thrones a season like 12 episodes and actually extended the information we got from this episode a little bit. I think that would have maybe been cool potentially. I don't know. And Dorne, I really enjoyed Dorne. And it's funny because going into that episode, I was having a lot of random thoughts about how the show could potentially fix Dorne, and I had a really random kind of cool idea for that, but they, obviously didn't do that naturally. But it was still, I guess, it was still a cool way to wrap up the issues with that whole area, and obviously I think that's it speaks for itself. So I think I'll leave it at that.
All right, and I found the interview with the guy. His name is Ramin Djawadi, and I'll post it in the description below. What a great fucking episode. There's just so much shit that happened. Like I said, a lot of links below. Charlie, why don't you take us to our first place? Oh, TeeBaby won't be able to join us today. Fucking sucks, but it is what it is. And we'll do some predictions for next season coming up. So I'm sure she'll be able to join those. And Tony's on his way, driving currently was the last I heard. So, all right, let's get things kicking off. Charlie.
Alrighty, we're going to split things up into 4 basic areas today. We're going to be first starting with combining the events in Oldtown, Riverlands, and Bran / the Tower of Joy scene into one. So I'll just recap every little event that happened in those places, and then we can talk about events there. So let's talk first about Oldtown, since that's kind of the official coming of winter with that. So Sam and Gilly arrive at Oldtown and report to the Citadel. Sam is scheduled to meet the Maester. In the meantime, Sam is granted access to the library, an open tower filled with floors upon floors of bookshelves. Meanwhile, the Citadel releases countless white ravens to signify that winter has officially begun. Anyways, in the Riverlands, we'll do Riverlands first. In the Riverlands at the Twins, Walder Frey celebrates the recapture of Riverrun with the Lannisters and remarks to Jaime that both of them are alike and that they both are men who had betrayed their kings. Jaime bitterly reminds Walder that the Freys are only the rulers of the Riverlands thanks to the Lannisters, and that the Lannisters will cut them loose if the Freys can't keep hold of it. Later on, Walder has lunch alone, wondering where his sons Lothar and Black Walder are. His servant reveals that both men were baked into the meat pie he was eating. She removes her face to reveal that she is Arya Stark, and slits his throat. Alright, last but not least, we have events with Bran just beyond the wall. So as Bran, Mira, and Benjen near the wall, Benjen takes his leave, stating that the wall's magical protection prevents the dead from being able to pass. Mira assists Bran to a weirwood tree, and he re-enters the memory of Eddard Stark at the Tower of Joy. Ned finds his sister Lyanna Stark hemorrhaging from childbirth. With her dying breath, Lyanna pleads with Ned to take care of his son, keeping his secret safe, lest Robert Baratheon kill him. The ending of the scene focuses on the newborn's eyes, then cuts to Jon Snow's eyes in Winterfell. Wonder what that could mean. Alright, I'll let you take the comments away first, James. Those were the recaps, and I don't have too much to say on them, so I'm probably going to respond to all of your comments first. You might want to.
Does anybody want to go first on this one? Mama, go.
Okay, we're only talking about Oldtown and the library, am I right? Where are we?
Oldtown, i.e. the library. The Riverrun, or not Riverrun, the Twins and Tower of Joy. Those 3 scenes, whichever you like to talk about.
Oh, good grief!
Is it too much?
Yes, it's too
How
much.
we focus on Oldtown and Riverland first, and then we'll go to Tower of Joy last.
Okay, Oldtown. I think this was really important. It was short and sweet, and I loved it. And I mean, I had a library-gasm because I love libraries, and my God, was it beautiful. Found it very interesting. Number one, the guy who plays the bureaucratic asshole in the beginning is some famous comic, I think, in Britain. But I loved his glasses, thought that was a great piece of property there. I loved it when he said women and children are allowed, which is fascinating because all the men we see in these shows are so caught up in politics and war and their own things. Who the hell is going to teach these children to read? The women. And the children need access to the library. So I thought that was really a great statement. And very ignorant and callous one as well, and misogynistic and anti-children. But I digress. Moving on to the more important things, as we walked in there and Sam looked up, I think this was the most important part of the scene. I don't think the answer is in the books. I think the answer is that it's not an astrolabe. It is a heliostat that is hanging from the ceiling. That is the answer, in my opinion. And I'll tell you why. And this plays in with my salt video I did with James. I took a lot of notes on this. I'm going to talk about it really quickly. A heliostat comes from the Greek word for sun, helios, and stat, as in stationary. It's a device that includes a mirror, usually a plane mirror, which turns so as to make a concentrated form of light projected in a certain area. Remember that, a concentrated form of light into a certain area. I think something like that could be built. Hold on, we got a motorcycle. I think something like that could, in essence, be used if we had some kind of light directed onto those zombie whites. I thought that was really, really, really important. It would be a magnified source of light. I also wanted to mention that when I was researching heliostats, it took me to something called molten salt. And I don't know if you all know this, but molten salt is actually a liquefied form of salt that remains in a physical presence. It doesn't become liquid. It's a solid at regular or certain temperatures, which leads me back to what are those White Walkers made out of. And remember, if you look at the wall, it ends at the oceans. And we have seen that the White Walkers would not go into the ocean. They could have gotten on boats around the wall. They don't do that. There's something about that salt water that does something to them. Perhaps it dissolves them. It's something about it that keeps them from going. And we see the same thing, and James and I did the video of the Line of Night, which talked about this event occurring as well in Essos, and they had a ring fort there, and it was surrounded by certain desert and waterways. So just keep that in mind. I thought that was very, very interesting. So this could be a solution to getting a lot of White Walkers out of commission at the end. That's what I took out of it. I also really thought it was interesting that the books were chained. They had chains all around them, like, this knowledge is only for the elite. Again, arrogance and misguided. That's all I have to say about that. Should I go on? I feel we're talking about so many different things. Should I?
Mom, kill it. We're going to go around a couple of times. The point is so that we can get as much as we can on 2 rounds. But do everything you can for all 3.
Okay, so what part of the Riverlands are we talking?
The whole thing. It's really Jaime and Walder talking, and then it's the Walder and Arya. That's it.
Got it. Again, I thought it was really fast and furious, and I wish the Manderleys could have done the Frey pie, but it's okay. It worked out okay. How Arya got there so fast? Well, you know, we're just seeing a lot of time-lapsing going on, and we just have to accept that. That's the willing suspension of disbelief. Loved her transition from Face to Arya. I thought it was well done. The Frey pie, my thing was so dark, it was hard to see that toe at first, but I must say, Black Walder needs to take care of his toenails better, because that was pretty gross. I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I thought Arya wasn't looking at Jaime just to flirt with him. That was the surface of it. I think she might be gunning for him later, too. So that's all I have to say about that scene. And that's it, right? We're not going to Tower of Joy yet, are we?
No. Oh, yeah, we are. Yeah. It's part of Bran's vision.
Let's hold that one.
It's part of Bran's vision. There's too much in this episode. It's part of Bran's vision.
All right, Tower.
Why don't we come back to you? You can get a second to think about it.
No, I know what I'm going to say about it.
Go for it.
Tower Joy. I loved it when Ned turned around, and this time Bran wasn't there, that it was just the Dornish horse there. It was Dornish because he's in Dorne. Remember that. Same kind of horse blanket that Bronn and Jaime had when they went to get Myrcella. So I loved it when Ned burst in the room. I'm curious as to whether or not they had given her a C-section, which is unlikely, because the blanket she had pulled up over her stomach was covered in blood, like they'd done something to her stomach area as opposed to the normal delivery. Okay, I also do not think that this discounts my theory, and a lot of you don't want me to talk about it, but I have to, because if it's true, then we have to talk about the possibilities later. I think there were 2 babies in that room. We had 2 midwives, terrible birth, complicated birth. We've seen that before with the Joanna Lannister's birth. You know, it was difficult when she had Tyrion, or so they say. And she had twins. We don't know how that birth went, but they all survived it. I think that there were twins in that room. And I don't think we have been presented with the rest of it because this story is a mystery, and it has been from the very beginning of the original book. So why wouldn't she present Ned with a baby? For a number of reasons. I've talked about it before. Ned can't hide a silver-haired, violet-eyed girl up north. He can't. They're first men. Most of them are dark or redheaded. Okay. The second thing is that she might not have thought that child was so important because it usually appears that the males are going to be the heirs, and, you know, Rhaegar thought it was going to be... James, I know you disagree. Let me say my theory, please. Really, okay, just hold on. But, you know, it's the prince that was promised. Now, we know in Valyrian you can interchange the sex on some words, so it could be the princess that was promised. But my feeling is that she thought the male heir was important. As to what she said, they cut out on a little bit of these lines intentionally, but you did see her mouth some things. I don't know what it was. It looked like it was a vowel sound, but it didn't look like Aegon. And some people have said it might have been Jaehaerys, which kind of starts out looking like a vowel sound if you watch the lips. And Jaehaerys was a good ruler for, I think, the 3 years he ruled. But she did say, you have to protect him because Robert will kill him. We heard that. So... And then how many times did she say, promise me? I counted 4. So, interesting. I think we'll see another reveal of that scene much later. That's it.
Lovely, Mom, and I'll go ahead and go next. So, I wanted to clarify that when I'm shaking my head, it's not to me about firstborn. Hello, I'm on your... I can totally see where you're coming from, and I was actually going to say something similar about... the reason why Jon would be treated differently than Dany. You and I have talked repeatedly about the way this works is that they cannot, Ned cannot possibly care for the kid with the different hair and eye color. Everybody will know, so it has to take her somewhere else. If that's the case, Lyanna's smart enough to know that. And by the way, let me preface this by saying that I agree with my mom. I do think Jon and Dany are twins. I know the majority of y'all think we're out of our fucking minds, but I sincerely do believe so. So I'm going to keep talking about it. Number one, that room felt claustrophobic when we went in it. We clearly did not see the baby until they wanted us to see the baby. But it did not become any less claustrophobic once we saw that baby. And it would not be too difficult for them to have hit another one. And we've talked about the lemon trees in previous videos, but if you go back, and maybe this is complete serendipity, but go back and watch that girl that plays Lyanna. She looks exactly like Dany. Exactly like Dany. She even does the curled eyebrows when she's laying in the bed and in pain. They could not have picked an actress that looks more like Dany, truly. Just can't say that. But to what you were saying, Mom, about the male being more important, to me it had to do with Lyanna wanting to tell Ned, you're going to have to take care of this. Promise me you'll do that. Also, you need to find something to do with this one because you can't take it back to Winterfell. Promise me. So, and he says in the first book, the promises I've made. He thinks to himself, the promises I've made, which could be a million different things, but the promises I've made. But about the heirness, I do think it's not far-fetched to think that Rhaegar would have thought that this kid was that important and have told Lyanna the same. This is the prince that was promised, or 3 heads of the dragon, this is supposed to be the 3 heads, whatever it was. And it could have been something about that, but I really think it more came from who needed to be saved. You mentioned the heliosphere, Mom. I had not looked up what it is. To clarify for anybody who didn't notice, if you go back to the Citadel, the things hanging from the ceiling that are reflecting the light all over the room are the map that we get at the beginning of the episodes. It's the same situation. But what you were saying about that idea being used to magnify light, I have suggested before that that literally some kind of light will be used in the end, which was mirrored by Oberyn using the shield to reflect light into the mountain's visor so that he could get the jump on him, which is how he stabbed him, or at least attempted. He got out of being killed. But anyway, so that's very interesting that you mentioned that. I think that it's important to note that when Bran goes back to the tower and Ned turns around, Bran didn't hear himself and did not see himself. So I don't know whether that means that your voice is not a part of the present, but the person feels like they felt it. maybe it's mentality only. The only thing that can travel through time is your thoughts. Not your actions, not your words, your thoughts. But thoughts can come in the form of words or visions. So does that make sense? You can't act upon the past, but you can through the mind connect with somebody in the past. Would you explain, Hodor? Anyway, and why Bran could not see or hear himself. Just something to think about. These are tiny little things. I just think it's important. We could not tell what they intentionally went quiet with some of the stuff Lyanna said, and what she was saying. And it's really quick. In the link below, I've got the closed captioning dialogue for it, and to me, it's clear that she makes an S sound, and it looked to me like she said either Aerys or Jaehaerys. Jaehaerys was supposed to be, and they've talked about this on Reddit, Jaehaerys was a really good king from what I've heard, fantastic. It just wasn't the right time for it to work out. And I don't know enough about it, to be honest, but he's supposed to be a really good king. Aerys doesn't seem to make as much sense, and Jaehaerys seemed to be longer and started with a J. The thing is that in the show, they omitted Jaehaerys. Aemon tells Jon the lineage, says, my father was Micah, the first of his name. My brother Aegon, ruled after him when I refused the throne, and he was followed by his son Aerys, whom some called the Mad King. If I'm not mistaken, it went Micah, Aegon, Jaehaerys, Aerys, Rhaegar. They omitted Jaehaerys. Something to think about. I don't know whether the omission was intentional, whether they disregarded or they're referring to a different Jaehaerys, or whether it's not Jaehaerys at all. Something to think about. We don't know if it was Arya, but the Frey, Walder Frey specifically said, you don't look like girls from around here, which makes me think that that body was stolen elsewhere, which means that when the girl was flirting with Jaime, it was Arya trying to lure Jaime. We don't know that, but definitely something to think about. I was a little taken aback by the toe being in the sandwich, because I'm thinking if there were in the pie, because I'm thinking if he had bitten into a toe in a pie, he'd have known something was up. The fucking toenail. And there's just one toe? Doubt it. It kind of threw me off. She likely served him that piece that he got, so it might have been all planned from the get-go. Here's something really interesting. Do you remember the parable we heard in connection with violating guest right? The rat cook. What was the rat cook tortured? How was he tortured for the rest of his life? He was forced to eat his own young. That's exactly what Walder Frey was made to do. All right, pointing that out. All right, of all the things we're talking about right now, Tower of Joy was awesome. To me, the scene that I felt most emotionally invested was Jaime talking to Walder Frey. That scene was immaculate to me, because it's one scene and it just immediately changed Jaime fluidly from the character that is Jaime, that we've all been mad at because he hasn't progressed, into where he is in the books. And when you combine that with him seeing Cersei later on the throne, that's it. He's done, in my opinion. We'll see, but we finally got. The point is, that scene was fan-fucking-tastic. Rat Cook, I mentioned. Original brand, Jaime. Oh, the chains. I can't tell if the books are locked away, and I think they are. I think they're literally locked away. Somebody mentioned online that perhaps the chains reflect the material that the books contain. So if you want to master lethargy, whatever it is, then you get the chain that's like that and use those books. But it's like a Dewey Decimal System. So anyway, something to think about. But I think the beauty of that scene. By the way, when I saw that, just having had King's Landing happen, and I saw all these beautiful books, I thought, that's the Library of Alexander, and the Library of Alexander was burned. We just watched a big fucking explosion. All these are getting destroyed. Who else is left to destroy them? And my mind thought, Euron. I don't know, but we're going to talk about this later. Part of the theme of all of Game of Thrones is the destruction of humanity before humanity's faced with a real threat, an outside threat. And so that nothing's left when they're finally faced with a real battle, the one that matters. And in order for that to happen, every army and fleet has to be pretty much destroyed by the end of this. Everybody has to know that no one's coming to save you. There's not going to be a Littlefinger around the corner with a army of cavalry ready to trample the enemy. This is it. Which to me means that all that fleet that we have has to be destroyed. I'm getting sidetracked, really. But something to consider. I can't quit saying that. But the chains to me are going to be a plot point. That's why he touched them. Getting into the chains he's not supposed to be in, I don't know, but that's going to be a plot point. I have something. Oh, no women and children. No women and children, that's just so eponymous of the system that needs to change. The system that can't survive. No women and children? You're not going to give children access to knowledge. What the fuck do you want? You can't expect people to improve. Yeah, so, but you also understand it because they've got to keep them safe and they can be destroyed, Library of Alexander. So, but no way, it's just perfect. Can't. And I forget what Sam says. Life, Sam, what does he say? Life's
irregular.
Life's irregular. God, he could not have. That kid is the perfect Sam. If there's a single person cast in this that's fucking nailed it, it's him. All right, I'm good. Who wants to go next? Clare Gray.
Hello.
You're good to go, Claire. Go for it.
Okay, sorry.
No, yeah,
right,
I whispered it.
Oldtown, I would say, yeah, that was my favourite quote, actually, about the irregularities, and I mentioned on the review that I did with MP, the Maester will discuss, the Archmaester will discuss these irregularities with you, because that reminds me of me and my life, because I discuss irregularities in this story with Maester Payne, not the Archmaester, but Maester Payne. And I also had the idea about the chains being some kind of like indexing system in the library, so the metal relating to a particular section of knowledge. And just the only other thing to say about Oldtown was I thought there was a few characters in this episode that were in their own personal Tower of Joy. Cersei was one of them, and Sam was another in the library at Hightown at the Citadel. At the twins, I would say I completely agree, James, that scene between Walder and Jaime was just sensational, and it was kind of in episode foreshadowing when Walder said about Edmure, I can't go killing my son. I know it's by in-law by law. It gives the family a bad name, and that's exactly what Cersei saw on her return. Jaime saw when he returned to King's Landing was Cersei had done exactly that, by killing the son. There was definitely Walder Frey was kind of emphasising Jaime's character arc there, his past and his motivations in terms of family in the future. Arya, I thought it was great. Retribution for the Red Wedding. It was great to see the Frey pie. I think James' medieval pies were quite grisly, so I'm not sure it'd be that much of a surprise to have some kind of chewy, something nasty in a pie. And the only thing that I was a bit irked about after the episode was the thoughts and questions that I had about the Frey pie was great because it reminded me again of how much could have been done with the show in terms of the North Remembers, the Manderleys, the Great North Conspiracy, and it just irritates me very mildly that the show seems to be giving away these wonderful things but to slightly different characters. It's just the book purist nails down a chalkboard in me, but it's minor. Overall, I thought both of those scenes were great, actually, Oldtown and the twins. In terms of the Tower of Joy, MP and I have been having an argument about whether or not R+L=J is confirmed in the show. I believe, without question, it's confirmed in the show. What we're having a particular argument about is Bran's position, and what this means for Bran and how much did he actually know. So we're kind of at odds on that particular issue. I'm sure he'll pick it up. But I think my personal position on this is the show have given R+L=J without question. I wouldn't say that the theory in its entirety is confirmed yet for a number of reasons. Just very quickly, I would say the scene that we got in the TV show was a snapshot. It wasn't the full scene of the Tower of Joy. Case in point, Lyanna did not die at the end of the scene. She was still alive. They were still having the conversation. So there's more to be seen in that scene. And yes, it's probable that there is more to come. Maybe there was another baby there. Maybe whatever. There's lots of questions. I'm the kind of person that doesn't. I get irritated when it's the case. If it's been confirmed, it's been confirmed, because there are still questions for me when it comes to the books. When it's confirmed in the books, it's absolutely fine. I'll be satisfied. I think I would have questions around why George would allow that to happen in the show if the answer is different. It's his big mystery. However, conversely, playing devil's advocate, I would also argue if it's not R+L=J in the books and in the TV show, what would an alternative actually mean? You know, if we think about it, I think the biggest argument for people who believe R+L=J is any alternative doesn't progress the story as we know it so far. So, I understand why people get annoyed about this issue, but personally, I still have questions. Nothing's confirmed for me. HBO have gone their own way, and it's clear that they feel it's R+L=J to me. I think it possibly might be different in the books, but I'll wait to see, and that's my position. That's it.
Awesome. I'll talk about them once we get her all the way around. Some other people haven't gone. Mama, I think you have, haven't you? Who hasn't gone? Charlie, go.
All right, I have a few things I want to say. Where to begin? Well, let's start with Oldtown. So I think it was kind of ironic when you look at Oldtown because, and you kind of touched on that, James, actually. It was ironic because, when Sam arrives in Oldtown, we have this ironically uninformed librarian who's also, as you mentioned, preventing kids and women from entering the library, and yet he doesn't have the right information, like what's going on at the wall with respect to the new headmaster of the Knights. Headmaster, wow. What's the word I'm looking for? Commander, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. I don't know where my head's at right now. And all that, and also the Maester of the Wall. And yet at the same time, then we have Sam entering this vast library of knowledge, which makes for a very interesting contrast when you look at it that way, because there's all this knowledge in this great, great library that this one librarian's guarding, but he doesn't really seem to be all that up to date on certain things. I don't think there's anything too deep to dig into that. I just thought it was kind of an interesting parallel, if you will. Let's move on to events. That was all I had to say about that specific scene, really. I guess I could talk about events at the Twins. Sorry, my notes are kind of all over the place here. Again, I didn't really have much to say on this one because you guys touched on most of it. I will say, though, for the it's one of those things that you guys are always talking about a lot, but I haven't heard it brought up yet this episode, and maybe I missed it for this discussion. But there was so much discussion amongst us about Lady Stoneheart coming back, and I was still skeptical. And I have to ask you guys, because according to the predictions I made at the beginning of this season, is that pretty much everyone except for me and Tony believed that Lady Stoneheart was going to come back this season, or at least would come back in the long run. I wonder if you guys, maybe you guys can answer it your second time going around, but I wonder, do you guys still believe she's going to come back, or are you starting to... Nope? Oh, interesting. LaDonna seems to agree with me now. I'll let you guys speak on that when you I guess, get a second chance to speak, except for maybe MP and Nico, who haven't spoken yet. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I noticed we did not get a Lady Stoneheart this episode, and there's only 2 seasons left, 13 episodes. And on that note, I think I have to speak on events at the Tower of Joy, because you LaDonna and James have brought up the idea of the twin Targ theory, and well, personally, I've always been a bit skeptical of that one, and I'm leaning towards disbelieving it at this point, especially. I mentioned this to James earlier, but again, there are 13 episodes left for the entire show. Now, in my mind, there's a lot left to cover, right? Not just counting the big conflict against the White Walkers, but we also have, other minor events going on. We have the effectively 3 factions, very generally speaking, forming in Westeros that are eventually going to clash at some point. I would assume. I can speak more on that if you guys want to know about that.
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
What's that?
I want to hear. I see your note in the side. I want to hear the Jaehaerys stuff.
My note?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. That was something else. That was just a response to what you said earlier, James. It was just that Jaehaerys, I think, was cut from the show. The historical Jaehaerys, the father in the books of the Mad King Aerys, I think was cut from the show because it was a little bit too complicated to include that character, because then you have a huge lineage of Targaryens who are fairly relevant to the events in Game of Thrones, but as far as show watchers would be concerned, it's a little bit much to wrap your mind around. So I just think they cut him out from the show, the short-lived king, for the purpose of keeping it simple. But anyway, I digress there. Going back to the whole R+L equals J or R+L equals J+D, I also sort of wonder, is it really necessary to have a or to have Dany and Jon be twins? I mean, is it that essential for them to be twins to advance the plot of the storyline, if you will? My whole point is that, Dany was kind of built up to be, rather that we're meant to question whether or not she is indeed truly mad like at least her reported father is. Mad King Aerys is claimed to be mad, but yet we see scenes of Dany where people kind of wonder throughout the seasons, is she going to go mad? Is she, crazy? Does she have emotions? And I think that's kind of been her whole build-up, or at least her storyline has been focused around that. So I think it would be a bit strange to kind of suddenly move away from that whole idea as to whether or not she is indeed her, the mad daughter of the Mad King, if you will. I know we can make an argument for Cersei playing that role as well, but we can get to that when the time comes. Claire kind of touched on that question a bit, because she mentioned certain questions being unanswered, and the Tower of Joy leaving some things unanswered as well. To be very honest, I think that the show, especially with, again, 13 episodes left, there's always going to be some loose ends. There's always going to be some questions left unanswered. There's going to be things we just don't know about, unfortunately. Maybe the books will answer those questions that we don't have answered in the show. I hope that we'll get some answers anyway. We probably won't get all the answers then either, but again, I think certain things are being cut short just because, 13 episodes left, not much time for covering every little single detail as far as they're meant to play out in the books. Another little thing I wanted to mention is that Wyla was in the Tower of Joy, and I made my own Tower of Joy video a while ago, and I actually mentioned that I believe that she was definitely there, and sure enough, she was there in the corner, standing in that room. So I just want to gloat a little bit and mention that I called that one. Beyond that, what else do I have here? I think that's about all I have to say for now. So I'll leave it at that. That is everything.
Well done, Colin Wyla. All right, Nico is in a conference, or has been at a conference, and is bookishly tired. So Nico, why don't you do your thing?
Yeah, guys, I'm so sorry. It's 2 in the morning in Italy. I'm washed up and I'm still at the observatory. So, for Tower of Joy, to me it's R+L equals J. That's it. Dany was born at Storm's End, so it's in the books. I don't want to argue or anything. It's just my opinion. Why Dorne was there? The reason is they're just pointing out to the sword that this sword is going to play a role. That's it for me. What else do I want to say? Oldtown, yes, this. Well, to me, I don't know if these I don't know, celestial things are like mechanical, or it's just to me at first sight it's more of it's a planet and maybe like an orbit or something. I don't know, maybe like zodiacal thing, because even though astronomy is a real science, while astrology is definitely not, astronomers use the zodiac because it's easier, you know, the size. So you have like a supercluster in Virgo or something. So we still use Virgo. So like if you have the wheel, you have the dragon and the and the wolf. Maybe it's the year of the dragon or something in their minds. What else did I want to point out in this episode? Yes, this globe or this orb is also in the library, the entrance room, with the guy with the glasses. This awesome glasses that. But it reminded me of Brazil, the movie that was written by Tom Stoppard. So I think it was nod to that. The library was amazing. I mean, also we need to talk about Benjen. I would love to talk about it, but I'm so tired. The only thing I want to point out in this episode, I'm gonna try to take a nap, like I don't know, half an hour, and then try to tune in because I'm really tired. The only thing I want to point it out not in these scenes, but like with Sansa and Jon, and it was Jon, Mel, and Davos, which was such a powerful scene because of Davos. Jon was for some reason explaining to everybody that like they were this is the dining room or the acceptance hall in the Winterfell, and he said, well, they were dining here, and I was always in the back, like the bastard. And then when you have the North Remember speech, you know who's back there, Littlefinger, where the bastards is. So I think it was really interesting that particular thing. I think that's why they put it out there. Also for the Frey pies and why this Frey pie was given to Arya and the North Remember speech was given to Lady Mormont. Well, there's a good goddamn reason, because they would have to introduce Lord Manderley and, you know, new location, while this serves a purpose. So Arya gets this revenge. It's, you know, it's poetic. It's really nice, and it's good for the like for mainstream. I'm going to use that word, for the show watchers. And also with the North Remember speech, it's because Lyanna names him king. So a person who's named Lyanna names Jon the king. So that's it from me. I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm so tired.
I'm so sorry, Nico. We will be doing prediction ones upcoming, so just...
No, like maybe even tonight, maybe if I just take a
Hell yeah.
Because
all right, go take a nap.
I love you all. So maybe see you soon.
Feel better. She's at an observatory right now. She's at the dorms near the observatory.
Yeah, it's a big dorm here. Ciao, everybody. Ciao.
I love you. Love you.
James, did you hear what she said?
Yeah, I got a response to it. Which part are you referring to?
She said it was interesting that Lyanna Stark just named Jon a king, and that Lyanna Mormont just named Jon a king.
I noticed the Lyanna, the way she phrased it was wonderful. And regarding that, it plays off of what Claire was saying. I feel the same way, Claire, when I hear a speech which I know is an allusion to a different speech in the books, but it's not the speech that I wanted from the books. I wanted to hear Manderley say, or Manderley's daughter say, when we were sore beset and friendless, the whole speech, because of how it felt in the books. Now, maybe I'm tainted because of the books, and I think that's what you're getting at, that it may not be fair, and had the show been in and of itself our only source, then maybe we'd feel differently, but I do feel that way. That said, we do get different aspects of it, which Nico was talking about, the fact that we get Lyanna supporting him as a king. Maester Payne?
All right. First, I just have a question for Charlie. Why do you think Wyla's there? Is it because the sound, when it sounds like he says her name? Because he doesn't actually say Wyla.
I thought he did, didn't he?
No, I thought so too, but he actually says something different.
What did he say?
I couldn't remember, but I've watched it, and he's calling for something. He's not saying Wyla. It's something else. I'm pretty certain, but I'll have to go back and watch it. But I thought the exact same thing, and then
He says, get her some water.
Yeah, I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure that he doesn't say Wyla.
He says, get her water. Is there a maester? I never heard Wyla.
Yeah, me neither.
Is there?
I'll get back to you guys in 1 sec, and I'll rectify that mistake if I did say it wrong.
I guess I'll go into the Tower of Joy first and explain what Claire and I were arguing about, which was would Bran come to the conclusion that it was Jon at that point? My argument is that he wouldn't. There's not enough information, and he's never grown up with enough information to automatically assume Jon. And that's what Claire and I are arguing about. I think that he still has more information that he needs before he makes that conclusion. Sorry. I am curious why Howland Reed wasn't in the background this time when Ned turns around. Before, I'm pretty certain that's when we see Howland in the background, and he was missing this time, which was just kind of interesting. I'm going to say, James, that I think the reason Bran doesn't see or hear himself is just because he wasn't technically there. He was just sort of an apparition at the time, and that's kind of the only reason there. I absolutely do agree with you guys that twins are going to play. I don't think there's a doubt in my mind whatsoever that there is twins. That's why we have the twins, like Walder Frey's twins. It's a steadfast metaphor that's going to be in the books. So I'm down with you there. I just think you guys have the wrong set of twins. Sorry, just checking my notes here. Dawn being placed there. I don't know if we have it, if we're going to have it in the show, but Ned still has a journey to do in the books. He still has to go to Starfall. There's possibly a baby at Starfall, so there's an option for a baby swap to happen there. Now, they omitted the baby swap with Dalla's kid and Gilly's kid, so I don't know if that means we won't get the swap in the TV show because we didn't get the northern version of it. So it's arguable that RLJ will be the case in the show, but I still don't think there's enough proof. And I think actually a lot of scenes in this episode prove that they're just setting you guys up for a big fall next season. Oldtown, the thing that I liked the most there was just the little joke that they had where the show is kind of irregular. This is highly irregular, but in the meantime, you have the library. We have the books until next season. It was kind of just a little joke there. That's all I really got there. And Walder Frey at the Twins, I thought it was probably my favorite scene in the whole show, unless you take King's Landing as a whole, like that whole episode. That would have been my favorite, but I love the payoff that we got here. Walder actually literally getting served was kind of pretty cool. And I do like the fact that he's assumed that he's achieved victory, and then the last thing he sees is the start smiling down on him. I thought it was great. I think that's about the most I have for this. You guys have touched on pretty much everything else already. So, and it absolutely does look like Dany. That was my first thought when I saw the scene. Was holy shit, she looks identical to Dany with dark hair. So, fully agree with you there too. And I do have a note here that Charlie did make a great point about the Maester. He doesn't have the right information. He's kind of clueless, even though he thinks he knows everything, but he doesn't. So that was cool. I like that. I'm done.
Awesome sauce. Mama, I see you got your hands up. Why don't you go?
Yeah, MP and I had an argument late last night. Claire, when you mute yourself, there you go, darling. I hear a little bird in your background. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Anyway, I only wanted to add one more thing, and that was this is a tie back to the Tywin Arya scene. Arya keeps saying "my lord" to Walder Frey, and Tywin said, if you want to pass as a serving girl, you have to say "me lord," and she still is saying "my lord." Walder is a dumbass.
That's a great fucking point, Mama. A couple of things I thought. Oh, you asked about Lady Stoneheart. I am no longer of the steadfast opinion we're getting her, but I'm still hopeful. I know that sounds fucking ridiculous, but I'm still hopeful.
Well, you know, I agree with you, James, except for this one slim hope. She had it in for Jaime. I mean, he's the one she really wanted. So if there is a conflict over whether Jaime will live, isn't it still down to Lady Stoneheart's revenge? So,
It's a good point. I have written down here, setting Arya up with Jaime in this episode, this scene. Jaime, who we already view as morally ambiguous, kind of think he's better than worse, will pair well with Jaime from here on out, intentionally making himself better and wanting to make not only the way people view him better, but the way he interacts with the world better, trying to get forgiveness, and then to have him be killed by somebody who it was vengeance. Somebody can't get better. What are you going to do if they get better? You can't just kill them. Well done, Charlie, about Wyla. Well done. If that's true. I don't know if we're checking on that. This is eking into another aspect, but the same episode where Sam shows up to the Oldtown Citadel, Maester Payne is killed, and Qyburn tells him to make way for the new, the old must be put to rest, or something like that. I think that was intentionally done. I think Sam's definitely going to be the Maester at the end of this, and it's perfect for him to let in women and children, to teach children, which is what he taught her. So when that kid's starting to be the age that it's going to want to learn, he's going to teach that kid. And when he starts teaching that kid, he's going to think, we should be doing this to everybody. The wildling kids, everybody should be learning. I say that because, in my opinion, this has got to lead to some sort of utopian situation with a bittersweet ending. Society works, but they know what they gave up for it. Yeah, something to mention. All right. Anybody else got anything they want to add to this one? Mom?
I only have one more thing because I forgot about that scene between Jaime and Walder Frey. I thought it was really interesting that last episode, I believe it was, we had that conversation between Jaime and Brienne, and about possibly being on opposite sides, and how they both still respected each other. And Jaime says, I hope that we won't ever have to fight on opposite sides. Let's hope it doesn't go down that way. He always has these really heartfelt conversations with her about ethics. And then you have to juxtapose that with this horrible rat-like scene with Walder Frey, where he's just gloating, and Jaime's like, you know, you're a piece of shit. Because if we have to keep, you think you won, but if we have to keep coming up here and rescuing you, what is the point of the Frey house? Just love it, because it puts him kind of in between an angel and a devil. And then, of course, when he goes back and sees what Cersei has done, it's like Jaime's getting an education. Yeah.
I just want to add one thing on the Lady Stoneheart aspect. Is they gave us Cold Hands three seasons too late, so she still has a chance to show up. I'm hopeful. That's all I'm saying. I don't know if it's going to happen, but they gave us Cold Hands way late, so they can give us her way late too.
I hope that's what happens. Anybody else want to make a mention on this one? I wanted to add that I think we don't have to, but we really should see Rhaegar in a flashback. If we're going to see Dany in a flashback, we should see Rhaegar in a flashback. And honestly, from what I've understood, a lot of people who are just watching the show and are not avid watchers, who watch kind of in passing, really, not all of them, did not understand what that meant. Because the idea of Rhaegar and Lyanna being raped, honestly, the fact that that was Lyanna, I think, might have been a stretch for some people. But anyway, they're gonna. Showing Rhaegar would be a cool thing to do. I put a link in the description of somebody I think, and Reddit had a lot of suggestions for people to play Rhaegar. I think this guy looks like I imagine Rhaegar would look, but he's got to have a cool, calm. A guy everybody likes, a good guy everybody likes who can sing. I wanted to get a little bit more detail about the chains. In the books, we know that the Faceless Men, or we believe the Faceless Men, stole the Shave Pate, the pig. What's his something? Shave Pate the pig. Stole his face, and we also know that we are going to get Marwyn or some equivalent, because somebody's got to teach Sam. But Marwyn's room is ransacked, and that's going to be awesome. We're going to get Citadel interactions next. But Marwyn's room is ransacked. Well, those chains were developed as a plot point. Sam might break into them for whatever reason, but so may someone else. I mean, somebody may be looking for information and break into those chains. Faceless may be the goal of that, or the source of that. Anyway, that's all I got. We'll move on to the next one. Let's do it. Charlie?
Alrighty. So I guess since we've all said our piece, we should move on to events at the North or Dorne / Meereen. What do you think, James?
You're muted, James.
You're muted. I can't hear you, buddy.
North.
The North? All right. Events in the North. So, let me just get my page up. Okay, here we go. At Winterfell, Davos confronts Melisandre about Shireen's death. Melisandre admits burning Shireen alive, but points out that she did it for the Lord of Light and that Stannis did not object to the sacrifice. Davos requests permission from Jon to execute Melisandre for her crimes, but the Red Priestess counters that she can be useful in the coming war against the White Walkers. Jon exiles Melisandre from the North with threats of execution if she ever returns. Jon and Sansa discuss who will lead the United Stark forces, with each deferring to the other. Sansa then informs Jon that a white raven arrived from the Citadel, bringing the news that winter has finally come. Littlefinger privately meets with Sansa in the Godswood. He reveals that his ultimate goal is to sit on the Iron Throne with Sansa at his side. He then tries to kiss Sansa, but she evades his advances and leaves. Later, Jon gathers the various Northern Lords, the Knights of the Vale, and the Wildlings to plan for the upcoming invasion of the White Walkers. Lyanna Mormont shames various Northern Lords for not coming to Jon's aid. The Northern Lords, Knights of the Vale, and Wildlings declare Jon the new White Wolf King in the North. And that was it for that location. Do I want to say my piece? I'll save my notes for now, but I will ask you guys one question. Maybe you guys will be able to answer it. I'm curious to I'm curious to hear what you folks think of Sansa. What is her, her objective? Is she working against Littlefinger? Is she working with Littlefinger? To me in the episode it seemed like she was very much in favor of Jon, but I've heard a lot of discussion online that perhaps that's not quite what the intention was. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Is she, does she have something else going on?
I lost you, Charlie, for a split second.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think we got the gist of what you were asking, but we only missed it last time.
I heard it myself. So I'll leave it at that. You guys feel free to answer, and I'll respond after you guys all go take your turn discussing.
I'll do a couple of things. To me, all right, about Sansa, real quick, I'll just do a little spiel. It was my belief when I started doing these videos that Jon was going to end up with Lyanna. Val, the lady above the wall, because it would be a connection between the ancient Valyrians in my mind and the ancient First Men. So that's apparently not going to happen. I mean, it could happen. Who the hell knows? But I am really the scenes with Sansa at Winterfell and the scenes with Sansa at the Wall when she interacts with Jon. Those scenes to me are on the verge of being sexual. They're not. They're brother and sister, but they're not brother and sister. Not only are they not brother and sister, but we started this story off with two twins that had sex, and we had a problem with it, a strong problem with it. But we've grown to accept it, not as morally okay, but to accept it. But we know the Targaryens did it, and we're not looking at them and judging them. We think it worked. We're apathetic towards it. Well, when Jon and Dany have that spark that we think they may end up together, if it's revealed that they're brother and sister, I don't think we'd have a problem with them marrying. I don't think that will happen. I think Dany will switch sides. But if they're brother and sister, we'll think, you know what, the Targs did it forever. They are a fucking good match. Let's do this shit. Let's start a new society with it. And then it won't happen. If we find out Jon is Sansa's cousin, that's further removed. And I think it would be justified. I'm sincerely suggesting that I think Sansa and Jon may end up together at the end of this. The reason I think that that's important to this topic is because if that's going to happen, the way I view it is Jon is king of Westeros, and Sansa is queen in the North, and that he gives her that power, and the people do as well. But and and I don't know what happens with Tyrion. She may still. That was one of my opinions, that she'll be married to Tyrion. And it won't be a sexual relationship. They'll have to build it like they did with Ned. But that's not what Tyrion wants. Tyrion wants to fuck people. He just wants to fuck people. But the reason that's important is because if Sansa is going to be... Sansa wants power. She does. She just doesn't know really how to grasp it and get it. But she experienced it with Ramsey, having power over Ramsey. And when she had an opportunity to voice her opinion with Jon, she did it outright, and she had good information to share at the Wall. At Winterfell, or before Winterfell battle, she wanted more. That's the issue. She needs to learn how to get power. But right now she's being pitted against her brother, and Littlefinger's supporting that. If she's going to end up Queen of the North and subservient to the King of Westeros in a way, then she has to learn how to get power, but also accept her place in power. And I think that's the key. She and family. It's family, cousin, whatever. And I think that was also played with Davos. That's not his daughter, but it might as well have been. Anyway, familial relationships are a strange thing. Look at Mom shaking her head like, you're out of your fucking mind, James. Alrighty, we're moving on. So we're doing Winterfell entirely right now, correct? Yep. So here's the beauty of Lyanna to me. Lyanna gives that speech where she calls all the dudes out, and they respond with... The lady has some harsh words, but true. The irony to me is she gets to be such a hardcore badass because she's so young. And a female, I guess, plays into it too, but it's really her youth. Because she gets to speak her fucking mind, and people go, what are you supposed to do? Challenge her to a fight? She gets to speak her mind because she's little, and I think that's badass, and she's right. From the mouths of babes. Plus she's Lyanna, which makes it relation to, obviously. And she stood up for Jon, the one who claimed he was king in the North. I think it's meant to be something... This had to happen, or excuse me, the fact that Davos had the conversation with Tormund about the thing about Mance and Jon is they weren't kings. Well, now Jon's a king, so that, and which is why Davos, when he stood up, I didn't get a hell yes, I'm supporting this, but I don't know. This changes the dynamic. I don't know. Melisandre said about Shireen to Davos, they died. Davos says, they died because you lied. She said, I didn't lie. I was wrong. And he says, well, they died because you were wrong, and they died. And we've talked about this before, but to assign intent is to make a subjective presumption about whatever information you're receiving. So she sees these visions, she acts on them. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know if they're true or vague imageries of dreams, but it's the fact that she assigns meaning to it that is the ultimate flaw. And it's not that she lied. She's not trying to manipulate. She's trying to do what she thinks is right. And the point is, good deeds, the intent behind the good deeds is not all. You need to actually do good deeds. If you lie you need to consider whether you're right or wrong. Your intent is not alone the good. I'm spreading the word of pick a horrible ideology. I'm spreading the word of fascism. It's ultimately a detriment. You think you're doing a good job, but you need to analyze what you're doing rather than the intent. You don't have to be a bad guy. I mentioned Sansa and Jon, King and Queen. I can't remember. Jon says, Father always promised, didn't he, about the snow? About the winter's coming. Father always promised, didn't he? He's not your father, but he did promise. In this episode, he promised. Yeah. All right, I'm probably gonna have some more after y'all talk. So why don't y'all kick it into high gear? Who wants to go next? Clare Gray.
Sorry, it takes me ages to unmute. Okay, Winterfell and the North. I thought there was some really exceptional visuals and dialogue in the scenes in the North. Despite me being all kind of about they could have done more with conspiracies in the North and things, but you know, I thought they did a great job. I thought Liam Cunningham as Davos was exceptional in this episode. I did just him choking back his words when he's talking about Shireen. I hate Mel. I hate Mel in the books, and I'm iffy about her in the TV show. But I actually felt a little bit sorry for her, and I kind of was wondering whether or not she was going to reveal her true self when, you know, just because she was vulnerable, and she needed them to see that she was vulnerable, and she kind of needed to make a play to stay because of what's coming and how important it is and what she can offer. And of course he couldn't kill her, she just brought him back. So, you know, the compromise was made, but I just wanted to kind of see somebody else as well as the viewer, seeing what Mel's true self was really like. So it just, and again, the big question there is what next for Mel, but I think we'll probably discuss some predictions at the end. I completely agree with what you're saying, James, about the show's dropping some pretty big hints. I've heard you say before, James, about Jon and Sansa, and I've always thought I'm not so sure about that. But the scene where they pan to and they shoot, you know, with the transition from the baby to Jon, and then it pans out to Jon and Sansa sat at the table in the Great Hall, and it kind of pans out to the rest of the Northern Lords. They look like, you know, he's got the dark hair, she's got the red hair. They look like Ned and Kat 2.0. So there is that. There's also the conversation with Jon and Sansa all centres around this issue with trust. So Sansa says she doesn't trust Littlefinger. Jon says we have to trust each other, we've got so many enemies. It begs the question, are Jon and Sansa going to be enemies? For me, it turns on a penny. Are they going to be enemies? Are they going to be married and ruling the North? And it turns on a penny, and for me, the question of which way it will go all lies with Littlefinger and his motivations and how persuasive and manipulative he can be and how strong Sansa can be. I thought that this is for LaDonna, when with the dialogue between Sansa and Littlefinger, and she's kind of lamenting about her youth at Winterfell, and she said, I thought about what I wanted, not what I had, and what she wanted was knights and southern nobility. What she had was the Hound and the North. So I thought you might like that one. The question that I would like to ask everybody is the Iron Throne really what Littlefinger wants? Are those I can't understand those intentions. Maybe for the TV show, probably not for the book. There's going to be lots of stuff, I think, with Littlefinger next season and him trying to drive that wedge between Sansa and Jon. I'm sure LaDonna's going to go into this in more detail. The whole King of the North speech was, why didn't Lyanna, as badass as she is, and she is a great little actress, why didn't she choose a Queen of the North rather than a King of the North as a female leader already of Bear Island? That kind of later on, when I rewatched it after I'd got out of the hype of like, yes, King of the North, was like, actually, hang on. And a couple of other questions. Is what they're doing in the TV show, in your opinion, to everybody, is it the best way to bypass the whole Rob's will from the books? Because that's clearly what's happened. and has had to happen. And the other question is, are the Lord of Winterfell and the King of the North two separate things, two separate entities? I'm just a little bit confused here, because Robb obviously was Lord of Winterfell and King of the North, but what does this mean for their positions? I'm just interested in what everybody thinks about that, and that was it from me on Winterfell and the North.
Lovely, Claire. You make some wonderful fucking points. I'm gonna mute you, Claire. I got it. You don't need to do it. No, you did it. Oh yeah. About the Sansa and Jon thing. When they're at the wall in one episode, they hug and they hold hands twice, and their chemistry is fucking perfect. And maybe it just stays brother and sister, but it's fucking perfect. They have real conversations. He takes her advice. She convinces him twice, and twice in the show so far, he has pledged to protect her. Where am I gonna go? Where are we gonna go? Or where are you gonna go? Where are we gonna go? Is the thing. And then most recently, I'll protect you. You can't protect me. No one can protect me. No one can protect anybody. And then in this episode, he kissed her fucking forehead. He kissed her fucking forehead. Could be completely, but is that not a fucking build-up? And it's the same thing that happened to Ned and it's the same thing that happened to Ned and Catelyn. It was an arranged thing, and I want to make this clear. I'm not saying that they're gonna have a budding romance. I'm not. I'm saying that at the end of this, if Dany chooses, wait for it, the Night's King, then Dany dies. That's not an option. We know Val's not an option anymore. Marjorie's fucking dead. There's Lyanna Mormont. The Osha. There's really not a lot of options. The Sand Snakes. Sansa's like the quintessential one. She's perfect. He's been with Redhead before. She was wild. Sansa's wild. It's a different kind of wild. They have to build a relationship up. It just fucking fits. I'm gonna let it go, but it just fucking fits. Also, there's an interview with the girl who plays Lyanna in the description. Lyanna Mormont. There's a description in the thing. Littlefinger says to Sansa about what he wants. Him on the throne, her beside him. Which, ironically, is exactly what he's trying... repeat, this is the second time this happened this season. He tells her that she needs to do something, or try to want something, and simultaneously doesn't give her it. He tells her, you need to have your own army. So not Jon's, your own army. So why don't you borrow mine? What? Borrow yours? You just said I need my own army. I'm not going to borrow yours. And in this episode, he says, what I want is me on the throne and you beside me. Meanwhile, he's trying to convince her to want to be the queen of the North. Who should sit on the throne of the North? Not him, you. Bitch, you want to take it from me. You don't want me to have it. I mean, he is a, and I'm going to go ahead and say this. Varys says of Littlefinger he would burn the world to the ground if it meant he could be king of the ashes. That fucking happened this episode to Cersei. She would burn the world to the ground if it meant she could be queen of the ashes. And it's true of Littlefinger too. He's just better at it than Cersei. He's had a longer path to tread. And I'll get more into that later. But Littlefinger says of this vision, I want to pull it out of my mind and into the world. This is the Night's King, and I don't know how much they're going to go into this, and they got, with 13 episodes left, in order for us to empathize with the Night's King, we need to know his story. And that's, I don't know if they're going to do it full-fledged in one episode or what, but we've got to hear that. All right, who wants to go next? No, Maester Payne's not gone.
Not on the North, but I did the last bit.
Do the North.
First thing I want to say is that Nico's observation about Littlefinger sitting in the back was fucking awesome. I thought that was really cool. I noticed that there was a strange juxtaposition between Sansa and Dany, whereas Sansa realizes that it's what she has is what she wants, and she refuses Littlefinger, who's offering her something else. Dany refuses Daario in order to gain more. She's actually going for what she's dreaming of, whereas Sansa at this point anyways is refusing, and I thought that was kind of neat. Charlie had mentioned something about Sansa and Littlefinger, and the end look, the very last look that Sansa gives Littlefinger, to me, the way I read it was she's concerned about what he's going to be up to. Not that she wants to be with him, but that she's nervous about what his plans are. And he still has Sweet Robin. And Sweet Robin's actually in control of the Knights of the Vale. And he's in Littlefinger's pocket at the moment. So I don't know if they've come out in support of Jon, but he's not there. So if Littlefinger changes his mind, maybe they walk away. I think it's arguable with what James was saying that perhaps the Northern Lords argue towards Jon and Sansa that they need to marry to solidify Jon's place. Maybe they coerce them into a marriage. I'm not certain about that. It's just something to think about. Claire had said that she hates Mel, and James brought it up too. But Mel is actually us. This is what we do. We read what we see and we come to our own conclusions, and that's essentially us. So you can hate us, but she is us. Lyanna Mormont, harsh words but true. I love that line because what she says is, we know one king, the king in the north, whose name is Stark. I do have a theory that Jon is an actual Stark and probably the only Stark, so I love those lines. I can't not like it. James mentioned Sansa and Jon wedding. We do have that with Tywin and Joanna. They are cousins. They wed. And Cersei even mentions in this episode the hypocrisy around incest in this world. So that's very possible. I still say, I think it was Claire that mentioned Rob's will. I don't think Rob ever names Jon in his will. I think he names somebody else. That's debatable, so I won't get into that. But I don't think it's Jon that he actually names, and it doesn't matter in the TV show anyways. And just the father always did promise. We actually didn't get Ned making the promise in the Tower of Joy. We don't see that. He doesn't promise, which is kind of interesting. So maybe LaDonna's right. Maybe we do go back there and see a bit more the finish of that scene, because Claire said Lyanna doesn't die. Ned actually hasn't made the promise yet, so that's hopeful. But I thought that was probably another one of the great scenes, is just them smiling about Ned and the snow falling and the gut-wrenching music. It was kind of a beautiful scene. Yeah, no, I think that's about it for the North that I have. Anyways.
I think it's my turn. Is that okay, Jamie?
Mm-hmm. You do need to wait till I pick you up. That's fair.
Well, we thought you were in the bathroom.
No, I have not gone to the bathroom yet. I'm eating. I was eating. I don't want people to have to watch me eat.
we didn't see you here.
Sorry.
You guys made some really, really good points. MP, those were really, really astute points there. I also, just to go back briefly to the Tower of Joy, I think it was really interesting that at 17, Ned is in a room with his sister dying, and I have said this before, Ned went on an incredible journey before then and after that. He has a lifetime of journeys that related to that war. It was unbelievable if you read the books. So he's there at the death of his sister in childbirth. He's a young man. He's been wed for, I think, 10 days before he left for that war. Catelyn's pregnant. He doesn't know about it. And this is what I'm getting at. Remember when Sansa has her first period and she says to Cersei, I didn't think it would be so messy. And, Cersei said, well, Robert wasn't there with me. Jaime was at the birth of my children. And Sansa expresses a lot of confusion over that remark. And she said, my father was always there for the birth of Cat and Ned's children. Well, I think that's really emotional and heartfelt, that after all the war, and even seeing his sister dying from childbirth, he made a point to be with the living. to see the births of his children, which not all men did. And he's just a great guy. Flawed, great guy. Dumb in some respects, but a good guy. Okay. Claire. Oh, Claire, I love you. I'm going to go to that scene now. Okay. Sansa and Littlefinger underneath that tree. So Brand is going to get to see all of that, by the way. So I loved it. You're right. You know, she had this pretty picture that she was going to have of knights and beautiful clothes and having a little power position down in the southern area, and it all blew to hell. And when Littlefinger says, he doesn't say, let's be on the Iron Throne. He said, his ass on the Iron Throne with you, girl, at my side. Like, you're not an equal. I just have this image. Yeah, he pulled it out of his mind. Good point, James, about the Night's King as well. But, you know, it's one thing to have an image of your particular success. We all have had that. To get there is what makes people different. I mean, I've got a lot of things I would have done in my life, but to get there, it meant a whole lot of compromises of the soul, which most of us aren't willing to do. Because at the end of the world, it's just you. You come in alone, you go out alone. And, man, I don't want to be there saying, man, I made a terrible fucking decision for power or money or whatever. You know. And she says to him, and she listens to him intently, and she says, that's a pretty picture. And she walked away. God, she didn't need to say any more, did she? It was a fuck you to Littlefinger. And it was, I know what my pretty picture was. This is my home. I love it. I'll tell you about Littlefinger. What does he want? Yeah, he wants the Iron Throne. We were all kind of wondering what he wanted. He doesn't really want to be king of the Ashes. He wants to be king. If it comes to Ashes, he'll do it, just like Cersei, but he wants the Iron Throne. In the books, before Martin changed it, Sansa was going to betray the Starks. I don't know if you all know that. I don't think it will happen in the show. Now, as to... Sansa's at that head table. Littlefinger's back in that corner. There's going to be a huge showdown between Sansa and Littlefinger. Absolutely a huge one. And, you know, we've got to parallel Sweet Robin with Rickon. He's essentially a prisoner, basically, of Littlefinger's psychological manipulations. And Sansa's going to have to make a decision about whether to save Sweet Robin or not. And I think Sansa's going to take the tough line. You know, my skin has turned from porcelain to ivory to steel. She's not a bad person, but she will have to do that. James, ask your contentions about this potential romance between Jon and Dany. My God, the Sargent family is one of the touchiest, feeliest families anybody will ever meet. If it were up to you, you would have said my brother and I had had an incestuous relationship our entire lives because we can't keep our hands off of each other when we meet each other. We're always holding hands. We're always hugging. We're kissing on each other, not on lips. It's just family. It's a touchy family. Sorry we haven't seen it too much in Westeros, but this is one of those that is that way. No, I don't think there's going to be a romance between them. I do think we're seeing the potential problems between them if either one of them were super ambitious as far as being on the throne. Jon doesn't really give a shit about it. He just lands in it for a number of reasons. One of them is that he's a guy. And I think that's why Lady Mormont, Lyanna, you know, her mother was the head of Bear Island. So it is women can rule there. But I don't think that was the point. I think that Jon had taken a real power position in the battle. He came across as a hero. Sansa fucking saved them. But at any rate, he was the proper person then. But there's going to be some friction between them. I don't think it will come to anything. I think they are aligned in a familial way. I do think it's going to be a big bad between Littlefinger and Sansa. And as to who the ultimate king will be, it will be Sansa. She is Elizabeth. That is who she is. She is the Virgin Queen. She's not a virgin, and I don't know if she'll be a virgin in the books, but essentially that's what she is. If she'll marry again, if she marries again, it will be who she wants to marry, and it will not be anybody with any ambitions at all as to her position. It will be for love. And again, I've talked about Victorian literature, and the Hound fits it. She doesn't care if he's pretty. She doesn't care if he has a position. She cares that he's true to her and won't fuck her over. And as an added thing, he comes with a big fucking sword. So it's a good thing. Okay, couple other minor things. Y'all mentioned the Dany Dario scene. I just want to talk about that real quickly. I didn't. I thought that scene was important because it was the parallel or mirroring of Robb marrying Talisa or Jaime Westerling. Robb was an idiot. Dany, and he didn't really care about that girl. He screwed her because she was nursing him back to health, and he just had sex, and he felt like he needed to do it out of honor. Dany has realized, no. Yeah, you were great, and I get it, and you like me a lot, but I'm not marrying you, buddy. If I marry anybody, it'll be somebody in Westeros who can help me with my position of power. Thought that was important. It was a good decision on her part. And ultimately, she said, I don't really care about him now that I'm away from him. Kudos to that. I think I'm about finished. Hang on. I thought that Liam Cunningham, you're right, Claire, and I've done a little bit of acting, James has too. You know, to get that emotional, you've got to get really cranked up before that scene. And when he choked back the last words coming out, it was because it was becoming so emotional, not just for the character, but also for the actor. That's acting. Boom.
Love it. About the Jon and Sansa thing, I think that the way you're portraying it is unfair. I'm saying that we lost Charlie. Hopefully he'll be back in just a second. I think that it's a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but to me it makes sense. And the touchy-feely aspect of family is not really what I'm getting at. It's the foreshadowing. Life's not real full of foreshadowing. It only appears to be in hindsight. The books are. So I don't know. By the way, for the audience out there, I was at the dinner that comes after a wedding reception. Is it the reception? And my uncle pantsed my mom in front of everybody. Funny. I was a kid, and I'll never be the same. So somebody mentioned in the comments that Bradley James might make a good Rhaegar. I don't know who that is, but I looked up the image, and I agree that would make a good Rhaegar. Pyronucleus noted that. Littlefinger and Sansa. When Sansa says no to Littlefinger, that is an example of her. That's literally the reason they did the scene, is because it's her power. She's taking power. Earlier, when he tried to kiss her, she went along with it, almost because she felt powerless. Now he tries, and she says no, which is an important lesson for everybody, but particularly young women, because older or more aggressive males, it's not uncommon for them to not desist. And no needs to be something that girls especially feel okay saying. I know that it's not meant to be sexist, but it's an important thing. You need to know that you can say no. Same thing for guys, drugs, doing stupid shit, less so the rape thing, but still. Not that it's the woman's responsibility, it's the men's fault if they do something like that, but you still need to be able to say no, because they need to know it's not okay. You need to be comfortable asserting yourself. Doesn't make it your fault if you don't, but they need to know no. So just say no. Littlefinger's pulling out of the mind that I mentioned earlier and bringing into the world is arguably something much deeper. Since we got the Hodor scene, the door scene, my mind's been racing as to what crazy shit Mark can do at the end of this. There are three main, from what I understand, there are three things Martin said you can't get rid of these three. We've gotten two of them already. We've gotten two more already. One was the door, and I can't remember what the other one was. But the fact that the last book's called A Dream of Spring, A Dream, and all these mind references and the idea that there may be alternative futures and pasts, which is not my opinion. I think there's one straight line. But if you know something in hindsight, anyway, it's something to think about. The fact that it's called A Dream of Spring might be literal, and Littlefinger might be referencing that. Anybody else want to make some comments on this stuff before we move on to the next one?
I haven't said any comments yet.
Oh, shit!
Yeah, Charlie needs to go.
Sorry, Charlie.
No worries. I'm on my phone right now, so I apologize. Whoa. And that happened. I apologize for the issues. long story short, don't ever buy a Mac because they suck and they keep disconnecting from the internet. So, yeah, buy PC. Anyway, I just want to respond to a few of your comments that you all made. Where to begin? James, you mentioned that you think Jon and Dany are going to become an item. I think I definitely agree with you on that. However, and I think Claire touched on this, correct me if I'm wrong, I do think they're meant to engage in a conflict at some point. Again, I don't want to enter too I don't want to go into too much predictions territory, but I definitely think they're meant to fight at some point. Of course, ice and fire, we definitely think of these elements as being polar opposites of each other in some degree, so I think that's kind of speaks for itself, and I think really the coming of the White Walkers is what makes them, become an item, if you will. I'll leave it at that for now. I'll save the rest of my thoughts on that for next week when we do the predictions. If it's next week, we do them, of course. James, you mentioned Sansa as Queen of the North. Interesting point. I would just say, what if Bran, who is still alive, and he is coming south? I think that's an important person we can't forget about, and I do think he is, again, not to go into too much prediction territory, I think he's someone we can't forget about because he is obviously the only legitimate male Stark left out there. So when he returns to Winterfell, which presumably he will at some point, we'll have to consider his legitimacy as well. Moving things along to other thoughts, Claire mentioned she felt bad for Melisandre. I also agree with you on that, actually. I never really felt much sympathy for her in the past, but I definitely think that this past scene that we saw in Winterfell really, really made me, I don't want to say connect with her, but it definitely makes us understand that she's coming from a place where she's so convinced she's doing the right thing. Sort of like a lot of, it kind of presents the whole idea of, fundamentalists. They think they're doing the right thing because they're indoctrinated in this ideology. I think Melisandre's kind of reached a point where she's just, not to say she's realized her whole ideology is bullshit, but she is at a point where she's forced to question everything she's doing. So I think for now, and definitely Tony spoke on this in his own video, I think she's at a sort of crossroads where she'll either have to, go the complete opposite end, where she'll become an opponent to the Starks or become an opponent to the living, or she becomes an asset to them, which she was always intended to be, by trying to redeem herself to Jon Snow specifically. That was all I had to say for that specifically. What else do I have? MP asked, does Littlefinger really want the kingship? Well, honestly, it's funny I have to say this, because although I disagree with James and LaDonna on a lot of points, I think this is one of those things where I think they spoke a lot on that potential topic. You both made a video on Littlefinger like a year or two ago. I don't remember the title of it, but you basically spoke about Littlefinger and his whole connection with Cersei and her, again, I don't want to go into predictions, but her whole venture to Harrenhal potentially. Originally, I wouldn't have thought to necessarily say that's definitely going to come true, but I think with recent events, and again, not to go into predictions, but I think there is something to that. So I definitely recommend those of you who've watched James and LaDonna's videos, check that one out. And I hope, James, you can link that in the info box below, because I think personally there's a lot to be said to that video, especially now with the recent events in Game of Thrones. Moving along, so my answer to that actually is yes. I think Littlefinger, as you all said, or as a few of you said, Littlefinger does want to be king, even if it's of just the ashes. And I think potentially Cersei is his key to becoming king, potentially. Somebody talked about Sansa's choice of saving Sweet Robin or not. Obviously, Sansa ain't saving. She's not saving Sweet Robin. I mean, we saw it with her own brother. In Rickon Stark, and I think the same can be said of Sweet Robin, if it even comes to that point, which again I'm not really sure we'll even get to see that kind of a build-up, but I digress on that. I think that's basically it for my notes on that scene, so I'll leave it at that. Also, this is my computer right now, so yeah, I don't know what's wrong with it. I hate laptops. I hate Mac laptops. MacBook Pro 13-inch, you were a piece of poo. That's all I have to say.
As a side note, I have a Chromebook, Charlie. They're cheap as shit, and it's all through the internet, so you can't store a whole lot on the hard drive. But if you're not playing games, then it's not a good laptop to have. But simple but easy. Who wants to add some stuff? All right.
I'm definitely following that next. Or I'm going to switch to
James,
this.
just one quick thing in the chat. People are asking, are you not eating on the screen because it's Frey pie?
Some people like a little human.
I just want to add to Charlie that that Littlefinger Cersei thing was awesome. I can see that playing out totally. He's her only choice at the moment, as far as I can see.
So I really.
James,
The only one.
can I say one thing about MP to MP? I agree with you and Charlie because I think this plays into James and my concept about Harrenhal. I mean, I think Cersei is going to get pushed out of King's Landing. I mean, Dany is coming, and Littlefinger is getting pushed out of the north. Where are they going? I think they're going to Harrenhal, and it would make sense for them to join forces for a wee bit. So that's all.
And I wanted to add that Sansa needs to manipulate Sweet Robin. That's the clincher for her challenge against Littlefinger, which you were alluding to, Maester Payne. Let's see, I'm just trying to deal with stuff in the comments. All right, let's go to the next one. Charlie, are you prepared to take us to the next one?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. My computer's finally reloaded, so I can open the notes that I had opened earlier. Just give me 1 moment, and I will have it ready in a sec, I swear.
You're good. Sorry about the pause. Let's see. There's like I said, a bunch of links in the thing, the description. A couple of them are theories from Reddit. One of them's just a funny dump of memes from the most recent episode. Random stuff.
Okay, sorry.
You're good.
You want to finish your thoughts, or do you want me to?
No.
Alrighty, here we go. So we're talking about events in Dorne and Meereen next. I'll let you guys discuss right away because I'm going to reopen some browsers here after I read out the events of those scenes. But until I speak my notes, in Dorne, we'll start with that. In Dorne, Lady Olenna Tyrell meets with Ellaria Sand and the Sand Snakes concerning the possibility of an alliance against the Lannisters. Varys greets them by saying "Fire and blood," the words of House Targaryen. Meanwhile, in Meereen, Daenerys informs Daario that he will not accompany her to Westeros and will instead defend Meereen and the rest of Slaver's Bay, but now renamed the Bay of the Dragons, in her absence. Daario reluctantly accepts Daenerys' orders, protesting while declaring his love to her. Daenerys presents to Tyrion a replica of the badge of the Hand of the King, proclaiming Tyrion the Hand of the Queen. Having been joined by Varys and ships from Dorne, House Tyrell, Theon and Yara Greyjoy, Daenerys and her court depart for Westeros with their combined force in a massive armada with her dragons flying above. So I'll speak a few notes right. Actually, I guess I'll just say a few notes right now, and then I'll let you guys talk. I guess the first thing I have to say is I'm surprised. I was very surprised, actually, that Daenerys did not leave Missandei and Grey Worm behind to rule, because I kind of expected that, as did a few of you, if I recall. There's an interesting dichotomy left here again between Jorah and Daario, because those were the two lovers, or I guess love interests in the case of Jorah, that she left behind in Dorne, but for very different reasons. For Jorah, she said, come to me after you find a cure, which of course implies that she wants Daario to come back. And of course, when we saw them have that passionate discussion in the middle of this season, you could tell there was love in her eyes. It was one of the few occasions this very season that we see Daenerys actually showing some form of love and affection for another human being, in matter of fact. Meanwhile, with Daario, it's a very, very cold, very unemotive scene, but for her anyway, where she says, you have to stay here, you're going to keep the peace, and until the, I guess, the former slaves, or whoever's left alive in Slaver's Bay for that matter, can actually establish some form of order, and you and your second sons will remain here to make sure that gets taken care of. Again, very, very unemotive, and she never made any comment of him coming over to Westeros, which again, I think goes to show that, in spite of the fact that she questions her own moral or her own emotions with respect to that character, I think it shows that she actually does have emotions, because with Daario, she just didn't really have those feelings, but with Jorah, she actually did care on a very real emotive level. And again, I think I said this in my own review, but I think it also shows that Daenerys is meant to be a sort of Aegon the Conqueror-like figure. I compared her a lot to Aegon because, Aegon although he was a conqueror, he went over to Westeros, he invaded the different lands. He wasn't the one who really ruled or led. He left that to his sister wives effectively, and I think this is kind of, not to go into predictions, but it kind of foreshadows what could be happening with Jon and Dany, because Jon, of course, is the more popular, at least in terms of people who like him. He is, in this episode, he is elected by popular acclaim, whereas Daenerys kind of just takes power because she wants it. I think Jon would be the better figure to actually control matters of state, as would Tyrion potentially as Hand of King. But yeah, again, I just want to emphasize the fact that I don't think she is really meant to rule. She's more meant to conquer by force, or at least act as a military sort of component to ruling Westeros, sort of like Aegon the Conqueror was so many years ago, 300 years ago, I guess, specifically. I know, James, you mentioned a comment earlier, and I'm sure you're going to come back to that now, but I guess I'll just touch on it right now. You mentioned that Dany dismissing Daario proves she doesn't know what she wants, but I really think this actually does the opposite. It proves that she does not want Daario. It actually proves that she wants to be ruler of Westeros. And if anything, it kind of reaffirms the fact that she does indeed love Jorah Mormont, although we don't really get that in this specific episode. It kind of comes earlier. It just reaffirms that, she's actually going for what she wants rather than, being undecided about what she wants. But I'm sure you can speak more on that when you want to respond to that. Dorne. I'll just say one little thing on that before I say more later on. Olenna mentioned the historical Tyrells being in the historical Tyrell leader being in Dorne and being killed by a bunch of scorpions on her canopy. That actually did happen in the books, and I just love that they included that in the show. They don't often do that with the TV show because a lot of events in Song of Ice and Fire, especially things that are found in the World of Ice and Fire book, which I really, really enjoyed, probably one of the few who did. But a lot of the events they include in that book, I just love it when they include it in the show and they include these little historical tidbits. So that was one of the nice parts of Dorne, obviously, along with the fact that Olenna scolds and tunes in the sand snakes this episode, which is something I think we all wanted to see. Do I speak on my alternate Dorne? Actually, no, I'm going to leave it at that. You guys go ahead and I'll take my turn again in a little bit if I have the time, because it's 9:15.
Yeah, we'll get you first on the King's Landing stuff, which will be next. So try to knock this one out. I don't think a whole lot happened in this, and correct me if I'm wrong. Remind me, Martell's, Tyrell's, and then Meereen. That's what we're doing. Okay, there were 4 scenes in this episode that to me were just emotionally charged fucking scene. One was when the explosion happened, because honestly, that's a lot of fucking people for any show to kill, and we'll get into it in a minute, but that's a lot of people, and it was a big shock. The Cersei taking the throne, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Davos yelling like crazy, but one of the huge fucking scenes was Tyrion getting that Hand of the King pen. That was the most emotionally affected of this entire episode that I was, because he's worked, and he actually failed. I think that's funny. He failed, but he was still rewarded for the attempt and for being as intelligent as he is. Daario's in charge of Meereen now. That's an interesting choice. I think that he can do it, but we really haven't seen his connections to anything. He's pretty much just like an assassin and lover boy. So anyway, I'm sure it'll be fine. There's no one there to fight them. So, but is he the right person to be controlling this government? I think he's going to end up coming back and going, they took over. What do you mean they took over? They're creating a democracy. I don't know what to tell you. They're doing it on their own. They don't want me. Anyway, but I just don't see how he can do that. And he's probably not going to stay there, even though she commanded him to. I'm Daario Naharis. I always have a choice. Let's see. I laughed out loud, and it was intended to be this way, when Tyrion said, "This is really happening." That was really funny. Oh my god, it's actually fucking happening. Yeah, you mentioned, Charlie, by the way, about Bran's claim is going to be an issue. I know you mentioned that earlier, but I needed to say that you're right 100%, and I need to consider that. I totally disagree with you about Dany. How are there 2 moving Charlies simultaneously? Oh, because he's trying to get his PC located. Got it. That's really funny and surreal. I disagree entirely about Dany. I understand where you're coming from, But for me, the whole point, we've seen this entire show and books, that Dany is never really in control of what she thinks she wants. It's always been assigned to her. You're supposed to be, we're the Targaryens, we're supposed to be in control. She goes one step after the other. She kind of just falls into these things. It's her confidence, the fact that she's immune to fire more than anything else. She's not that great tactically, in my opinion, but she has people around her that are. I'm not insulting her. I think she's a great ruler, but she's ultimately going to make the wrong choice. She doesn't know what she wants. To me, the only thing she really cares about is, I think here's two issues. The only thing she really cares about is those dragons. Partly because they're her children. Partly because it's where all of her power is derived. But to me, the reason she doesn't know what she wants is true of everything with the exceptions of the dragons and one other thing. She wants to be both. She wants to be a conqueror. That's just what she is. But at a certain point, you'd hope that conquering would end because you'd have conquered everything. Her issue is she can't decide between people who will do everything she tells them or people that love her. Duty or love. And Grey Worm is duty. Missandei is duty. There's love there, but they're slowly becoming more love than they were duty. Grey Worm, for example. And I think that that's ultimately what the Night's King will give her. They will all love you, and they will be completely dutiful. And that scene to me is what that was setting up. Fair enough to disagree. I love, and I say this with hesitation, because Marjorie and Loras were great, and there were some great arcs there. I love that, and their father was great. There is no one else in this show to speak for the Tyrells but Lady Lena. So until she dies, she is the conduit for all Tyrell action, and I love her, so I'm very good with that. Diana Rigg is the shit, and I'm so goddamn happy that she took this role. I loved Elena shutting the Sand Snakes down. It's really satisfying. It was surreal having Varys come out of there. And he said fire and blood, and there's just scene after scene that convinces me that he is a woman. I mean, were 6 women, 6 women in a room making deals so that another woman could be in power. It's just fucking perfect. She rang a bell, which I thought was funny, like the aristocracy. But gotta love it. Women getting together to say fuck them, we don't need them. Which is not how it happened for all the families, but that's literally what happened with the Sand Snakes. Men will never rule again. An incompetent man will never rule Dorne again. We cut from, and this has been a big thing online, we cut from Varys being in the Martell area to a couple of scenes later, him being on Dany's boat. It didn't really bother me, because I've accepted the fact that they're going to skip, because really the truth is, if you really wanted to, you could sit down and write every choice that a character makes along the way to take them on their path, and you want to save some of those for surprises. But really, once they've proven to us that they could write it and make it interesting, if it's not the main point, I'm okay with them glossing it over. I don't need to see Varys calculating how he's going to do this, the complexity of it, unless it's going to be a build-up of a huge thing. So that was not a bother to me. And it was made even less of a bother when I realized after the fact, seeing pictures online, that some of those ships of Dany's are both Martell and Tyrell. There's Martell, Tyrell, Targaryen, and Greyjoy ships. The fact that those ships were there clarified that Varys went over and came back with the ships. That said, the thing that bothers me about it is Dany and Varys have never met on the show, ever. They've never met on the show, and so we're just supposed to see that as like, boom, they're there. And the reason I've excused it in my mind relatively recently is, and I don't know, I mean, it's excused either way, but the way I'm picturing it in my mind is when he came over with those ships, with the Martells and Tyrells, he came over and said, I brought you these ships, and we're on your side. Or somebody else spoke for him, but I don't know, this bothered me a little bit. All right, see what else we got.
James, I'm sorry to say they have met before. There is a scene with them together.
Is there? Where is it?
Just they're all standing there. Varys doesn't even talk, but he's standing in the background, and it's Tyrion and Dany. It's a couple episodes ago, maybe even last episode. Well, no, not last. Probably 2 episodes ago.
I guess he may have been there when Dany showed up. No, he left right before Dany showed up.
I promise you, there's a scene with him in the room and Dany's in the room as well.
All right, if you can, remember anything in there so I can look that up later. Anything
I'll
from
look for it afterwards and let you know, yeah.
Okay. I'm looking for more shit. Let's see, what else is there? It's cool to see the women together. That's awesome. And it's not just those women. It's Varys, Dany, Osha, Olenna, whoever the Martell. It's really cool. That said, their army, like I mentioned earlier, the point of all these books is to have humankind decimated before the final battle. That includes their ships. And we know not only do we have Dany and all those ships, literally this is all the ships that are left, excuse me with the camera, these are all the ships that are left with the exception of Euron, who we know is headed there one way or another, the pirates, who we've had set up in the plot line, and any ships in on the free cities. That's it, and the Lannisters. Shit's going down. There's not going to be much left. Just think that's important. All right, and who's next? Take the next volunteer. Come on, people. Maester Payne, do it.
I don't have much to say on Dorne except that Olenna makes everything better, including Dorne. It was great seeing her there, seeing her bitch everybody out. I thought it was great. Dario mentions a little bit of strategy and talking about taking over Castle the Rock. So I wonder if that's going to play next season, and I wonder if he will go against Dany and do that on his own. And maybe that's how he gets back into the picture. And again, there's that Dany and Sansa juxtaposition where she refuses him, but she's actually doing it because she's chasing her dreams, whereas Sansa's put hers on hold. And just seeing this is reaching because I know the Tar colors are red and black, but just seeing Dany's ship with the black sails reminds me of way back in book 1 when she remembers traveling on a ship with black sails, and for some reason I just have it in my head that that's Davos. Davos was the one that smuggled her out. Now, it's not ever said, but there is a chapter later on where Davos is thinking about Dany. This is when he's in either White Harbor, just before White Harbor, and there's a conversation in a bar about Dany, and he's like, I don't know whatever became of her. So I think he was the one that delivered her to Pentos or Bravos and let her go and to freedom from that. I'm just throwing that out there, and that's what the black sails reminded me of. Other than that, I don't really have much about either of those places, except for I can't wait for next season.
Wonderful. Mama?
What scenes are we on? Dorne and what?
Meereen.
Okay. It was a very emotional scene with Tyrion kneeling, and I still have a problem with whether he'll ultimately still want to kneel with Dany later. But at any rate, it was the first time that Tyrion had been acknowledged for being himself. That it wasn't because he was his father's son, even though that was conflicted. It was because she saw in him the potential to be a magnificent hand. And he finally got acknowledgement of this. This young kid who had been fucked over his whole life by his family finds a family who is from the line that his father decimated. The irony and the heartbreak and the emotionality of it was magnificent. And you know, here's a kid that came over on a boat. He had the delirium tremens. You know, he was DTing from not having wine. He wanted to die the whole time. You know, and he gets there, and look what happened. There is hope for everyone's life. The think, Dario, you're right, MP. That Casterly Rock thing made me prick my ears up. Like, what the hell, Dario? Are you really the Harpy? Are you going to make a plan and come back somewhere? We'll see. I kind of hope not in the show, but we'll see. This kind of goes to the end of the scene, but I just want to clarify this. People are saying this teleportation of Varys getting where he's going. He didn't come all the way back to Meereen. And Lady Olenna didn't go back to Highgarden. They sent ravens, and she said, send my fucking fleet down. Sent the fleet down Highgarden way, around the coast of California, if you look at the map. And they met in Dorne. The Ironborn and Dany and all the ships that were still left from the Masters, Varys didn't go back there. She met them part way. So they all met in the middle, and they're now going to head up towards Blackwater Bay to King's Landing. So, you know, there was a lot of time lapsing in here, but, you know, they didn't travel to all three places, folks. They met in the middle. MP, you could be right, but I really don't remember that scene about Varys being in the room with Dany. It could have happened. One way or the other, I want to go to that. Again, this is going to the end scene, but I'll talk about it briefly. They show from the side, they're coming up on the ship, and they show from the side Tyrion standing there next to Dany, Missandei's on the other side, and Varys is standing behind them, kind of catty-cornered. When they came around to the front of that scene, it was only Varys, Missandei, and Dany, the women, in my opinion. They left Tyrion out of that scene. Yeah, those strong women in Dorne, I don't like what they've done with Dorne, but it doesn't matter, really. The point is, I think it's magnificent that Olenna, who is, if you don't know, Diana Rigg, who was the star of the Avengers on TV. Look her up. She was one of the great beauties of the world. And look at her. She's in her mid-80s, and she's quick as a whippersnapper. Don't you wish we could all be that smart and empowered and still beautiful in her own elderly way? What an actress. What a woman. The sails kind of reminded me of Blackfire sails. You know, we've got Varys there. If he is indeed a Blackfire Targ, you know, I thought that was pretty cool. If you don't know it, Blackfires are the reversal of the colors of the Targaryens. Black and red, it goes the opposite way, black and red for dragons versus background. Anyway, I think that's all I had to say about those two scenes.
All righty. Who wants to go next? Claire.
Not much with Dawn. I thought it was quite the main thing that I took from it was Mama Sand talking about Heart's Desire before she rang the little bell, and it just made me think, who is? That's quite an interesting phrase, Heart's Desire, and then just reflecting on the rest of the episode. So you get. People do get their heart's desire in this episode, and I think that's probably why it's quite fulfilling and why we're saying, yeah, it's a really great finale, because there is that kind of sense of fulfillment, completion. People are getting their heart's desire. Sometimes it's in a really quite a twisted way with dark motivations, like Cersei kind of gets her heart's desire in that she knew from that nasty, horrible prophecy that she was witnessing her children die, so she kind of, that's because I watched the episode and thought, wow, she didn't seem that bothered about Tom, you know, her last child, and like, you know, her acting was superb. I thought it was great, and I know we're going to talk about King's Landing in a little bit, but I think in a way Cersei does get her heart's desire. Jon, possibly King of the North, gets his heart's desire, even though it might not be something that he wants or that he wants to even accept, but it's nice to get that acknowledgement. Dany gets her heart's desire because she's on her way to Westeros, even though she admits that she's frightened. Arya gets to be the smiling Stark down at the enemy, and gets, in some, again, twisted way, to fulfill her heart's desire. I think the more genuine, motivated getting the heart's desire would be Tyrion, getting that acknowledgement and fulfillment. Sam and his face when he just walked into the into the Citadel with such that great big grin on his face, and he was just so happy to be there. He definitely got his heart's desire. And yeah, so sorry I have to go on about that, but I just thought Heart's Desire was quite interesting. In Meereen, just some questions really. Dany talked about having to marry to make these alliances. It just made me think, who might she marry? Is she going to marry anyone? As James was talking about before with Dario, is he the Harpy? Was he the Harpy? What's going to happen with him? She's trusted him to basically run the show in Meereen, and that's quite a lot to invest in somebody that she admittedly said she didn't really have feelings for. So will he betray Dany? Will he be one of the betrayals? She's given him quite a big task. Is he up to the job? May he betray her in some way? The conversation between Dany and Tyrion, to me, it seemed like really quite sweet, brotherly advice that Tyrion was giving Daenerys, because she was talking to him about matters of the heart. So she was able to open up a little bit, and I did think, it kind of seems like an older brother giving his younger sister some advice about how to dump a guy, and at the very end, the closing shot with what I've been referring to as the Dragon Armada. So obviously you've got Daenerys' Targaryen fleet, and that includes the Ironborn, and as we see, and it took me the third, possibly fourth watch to realise that there were some Martell flags there as well. I think that's quite interesting. They're quite close. They're close. The time has passed enough for the Dothraki to be fairly proficient deckhands. Obviously under the tutelage of the Ironborn, so time has passed and they're on the coast near enough. They're a couple of episodes in, and we're going to be in Westeros with the Dragon Armada. And I thought the very last thing that I wanted to say was I thought it was interesting that the dress, just talking about Charlie and the fashion police, is that the dress that Daenerys was wearing very much mirrored Cersei's dress. It was both black with on the kind of the sleeves there was that kind of scale armor type of look to it. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. The two queens that are going to be at loggerheads. So that's what I got. That's me. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit.
No, it's wonderful. You weren't rambling at all. And
I just wanted to add that I'm probably wrong. Because I've been waiting for Varys to show up with things, but it might have just been him in the room with Grey Worm and Missandei. Because I've been waiting for other people to see him besides Tyrion. So I might have made that up.
I think the scene you're alluding to is the one where he's standing in the background and Kinvara comes in.
Possibly. I just know that I thought it was him, because I've been waiting for him to show up with other people, and I was assuming that it was Dany, but it could have just been Missandei and Grey Worm that I was thinking about, so I'm probably wrong there.
All right, Charlie, do you want to add a couple of things, and we'll make sure everybody's got their stuff added, and then we'll go to the final scene, and you can do it first. I know you want to cut it short. Anything you want to add right now, Charlie?
Nothing major. I shared most of the things I had to share in the chat. I just wanted to say, I guess, for your sake, is that, Dany Rigg, she's in her 70s right now, but she looks just like Natalie Dormer does right now when she was young. If you look at pictures of Diane Riggs when she was in the Avenger days, they're like the exact same person. It's crazy to look at it. Other than that, I had nothing else to add.
Wonderful. I do want to add, and I'm apologetic if I butcher your name, but Sohili Canales did a fan-fucking-complimentary picture with me. I made Night's King with glasses and a goatee. Yeah, she made the picture y'all gave me. Is that right? Yes? Okay. She's the shit. I just want to show y'all this fucking picture. I know this is nerdy as fuck, and now I lost it. Where the hell did it go?
James said it, by the way. So
do what? Do what? Oh, I said it. Yeah. Where the fuck? Who sent it to me? It should be. Sorry, I'm taking this long. There it is. All right, gotta screen share it. I am so fucking complimented that somebody made this. Really, that's really sweet of you. Fucking awesome. And eerie as shit, and I think it looks a hell of a lot. Lyanna probably a broader face slightly, but damn, that's fucking impressive as shit. Impressive as shit. It honestly looks like my dad. Doesn't it, Mom? It looks like a lot like my dad. He's got a broader face than I do. Alright, just can't fucking tell you how appreciative I am of that, really.
So the commenter. So hi, Suhaili.
Yeah, she's in the chats right now watching, and I needed you to know that I'm very appreciative. That was very kind of you, and I'm complimented and will always keep that picture, truly. I'll probably end up with it framed, as will I the Great Council picture, and put it up in my office. And hide it when children come around, because I don't want to scare the shit out of them.
James,
Although, honestly,
everybody's saying drink to Suhaili and the Knights King James.
I'll put it up at the end again if anybody wants to take a second look. Okay, so a couple things. I never really thought about Diana Rigg as a young person compared to her. Charlie mentioned that Lena was in a black dress. That's a great point. She was mourning the deaths of her entire fucking family, which, by the way, is what Aemon said. What was I to do when the Ravens brought the news from the south? Only for her it would be the north. The ruin of my house, the death of my family. I was helpless, frail. But when I heard they killed my brother's son, my son's son, and his daughter. All right. I respectfully disagree with you, Maester Payne, about the timing. When Varys entered Meereen immediately after Dany left. It was the last episode of season 4. And Varys shows up to help Dany rule, or Jon rule, Tyrion rule. Tyrion's like, what am I supposed to do? And he says, rule. And
no problem. I've already conceded.
Oh, okay. And just for clarification for everybody else, he leaves right before Dany shows up in this most recent couple episodes. Yeah, I scratched that. So I mentioned that as well. Something I skipped over earlier. Jon's the White Wolf now. According to A World of Ice and Fire, I believe it's from A World of Ice and Fire. It might be actually from the real books. If a bastard has his own house, in the north, it's typically done by having the same sigil but switching the color from the background and the sigil. Well, it was gray wolf on white background for the Starks. So for him, it would be a white wolf on a gray background, which may be why they're calling them White Wolf plus Ghost. Yeah. So just wanted to add that, and also I think that if Jon ends up being the king at the end, and he's revealed to be a Targaryen, the perfect sigil for him is the White Wolf with wings. It has 6 limbs, 4 legs, and wings, and it's the winged wolf that Bran sees in his visions at the beginning of the book. All right, has anybody got anything they want to add to this before we move on to the next one? All right, Charlie, knock it out, the next one, and you go ahead and give us your impression, and we'll try to do this before you have to go.
Sounds good. I'll just give my notes, and then you guys can have a discussion. I'll check out the rest of the video tomorrow when I get back. But anyway, we're talking about events at King's Landing. So, in King's Landing, on the day of Cersei's and Loras's trial, the High Sparrow and many of the city's elite gather at the Great Sept of Baelor. Loras confesses to his homosexuality and begs to atone by giving up his name and title as the heir of House Tyrell, and joins the Faith Militant. However, Cersei fails to appear, and the High Sparrow sends brother Lancel to retrieve her. Meanwhile, Qyburn lures Pycelle into his chambers, and his child agent stab Pycelle to death. Lancel follows one of the child agents and stumbles upon a cache of wildfire. Somebody corrected my pronunciation of that in one of my own videos, actually, but it's a French word, cache, of wildfire primed to blow up underneath the Great Sept, but he is stabbed before he can disarm the cache. Inside the Sept, Marjorie, realizing that Cersei has planned something drastic, warns the crowd to leave, but the Faith Militant prevent the evacuation. The wildfire ignites and destroys the Great Sept, killing everyone inside, including Lancel, the High Sparrow, Marjorie, Loras, Mace Tyrell, and Kevin Lannister. Septon Unella is captured and tortured by Cersei and Sir Gregor. Tommen, who has been restrained to his quarters, witnesses the explosion and commits suicide by jumping out of a window. Jaime and Bronn return from the Riverlands and are shocked to see the burning ruins of the Great Sept. upon arriving at the Red Keep, Jaime witnesses Cersei being crowned the new queen of the Seven Kingdoms with Qyburn as her hand. So I'll just give my... Honestly, I had more questions than answers or than comments really for this scene. Obviously, the King's Landing scenes for this season in general were my favorite, but this was, for reasons I'm sure you guys mentioned already, it took the cake. Anyway, my questions. The first one, I guess I should answer is Cersei truly mad / insane, or is she just, you know, being pragmatic or at least being realistic based on her situation? And I don't know if that's the right words to use, but what I'm trying to say is that has she accepted the fate that has kind of been set forward and is just trying her best to hold power to stay alive, really? I'm sure you guys have various answers. I have my own thoughts on that. I'm not going to share them with you all because I'm more curious to hear what you have to say later on. I'll just say something Taryn TeeBaby mentioned for this video, and she didn't get a chance to be here, as you all know, so I'll share her thoughts on this specific scene. She said Cersei, you know, introduced the idea of suicide to Tommen back in season 2 when she tried to poison him, or she almost poisoned him during the Battle of the Blackwater. And I think that's a very astute remark because it kind of foreshadowed actually his eventual demise by his own hands, by suicide, effectively. So I thought it was an interesting remark on her part. It was a very poignant one at that. I had a few questions here, and I can't seem to find where did I put that paper. That's weird. I thought I had more written down for that. Or I didn't have anything written down, apparently. So I will just say that Cersei's scene, again, there's so many things I want to say that are based around predictions for the events around King's Landing, but the main thing I can really say is I'm really uncertain about how Cersei could maintain power. Obviously, she is proclaimed herself queen in title, which, granted, you know, Robert Baratheon did the same thing, you could argue, but at the same time, he did have the Targaryen lineage to make that claim, whereas Cersei, she's not only just a Lannister, you know, a lady of a noble house, but she's also, and again, if for those of you who know your Game of Thrones or Westerosi history, she is a woman, and of course, the last time there was a female ruler or a female who proclaimed herself Queen of Westeros, there was a lot of issues ensuing. Again, this is not my own opinion, it's just the fact that in Westeros, it seems to have been an issue. And I do wonder if the fact that Cersei claiming the throne, especially given such, you know, bloody events that led to her accession, I wonder if that would potentially create some backlash or create some reticence at allowing Daenerys to succeed. If anything, I think that'll probably reaffirm the fact that Daenerys does have to kind of claim the throne by blood and fire, or by fire and blood, by invasion specifically, if anything. It definitely doesn't bode well for the future of female rulers in Westeros based off of how Cersei did it. But again, it was a very epic scene during her coronation. I actually weirdly loved it. I know she's not supposed to be a likable character, and I definitely don't like her, but she is one of those villains in the series that really just... That moment where she was crowned queen of Westeros was just, damn, I really, really, really loved it. Especially with Qyburn as her hand, because I don't know if you all noticed it, but Qyburn has the hand of the pin on his lapel, or on his, I guess on his robes, which was very interesting. So I'm curious to see how they're going to deal with things next season. I have some theories coming out about that in terms of my predictions, but I'll leave things at that. I'm more curious to hear what you folks think about Cersei and her, you know, takeover of King's Landing. I will say one thing though, I was really shocked that she didn't actually burn the whole city down. But it does make sense if she's trying to succeed. I think it will come a time where she will probably burn the whole thing down at some point. That is my hunch. I can see LaDonna nodding with me, and I really want to hear LaDonna's thoughts on this specific scene. So I'll leave events at that, or I'll leave my thoughts at that. I really can't speak. I should not drink during these discussions apparently because I can't speak any better than I normally can. So, Night's King, folks. I'm gonna have to head off now.
Love you, Charlie. Thank you for being here.
It was great talking to you all. I will speak with you all, I guess, in a few weeks or in a week for predictions for season 3.
Love you.
Yes, sir.
Good night, folks.
Night, Charlie.
All right, I'll start off this spiel. I need to clarify that picture I put up of me as the Night's King is by Glenn and the woman I mentioned, Glenn and Suhaili Canales. All right, so a couple things. One, this was fucking incredible. Obviously, the music building up to all this stuff, one thing after another, and then it builds up to this huge fucking explosion where so many people died simultaneously. In the same way that these books and television show have prepared us to expect anyone can die, to expect the unexpected, this was and the Red Wedding was a predecessor to this, but this was the scene that really could instill in the audience that it's not just that one person can die or that multiple people can die, like the Red Wedding. I'm okay with destroying so many characters that you've come to know as central to this story. As far as I know who's important, you don't, and I will trick you if I will trick you on purpose, so that at the end of this, not only are you like, I'm afraid so and so and so and so are gonna die, it's I'm afraid everybody's gonna die, and I think that's just absolutely fucking brilliant. They're training the audience. Cersei's dress was fucking killer, and I know that goes without saying, but it's so important to say, fucking killer. And when the first time we see her looking out the window wearing that outfit, she looked like Tywin, truly looked like Tywin from behind. And they brought back the the costume designer that was supposed to have stopped. So it's just great to have her back. About Loras, that is, to me, such an easy scene for the audience or anybody, including myself, to gloss over. But that is a vital scene. What they did to Loras is what happens to what has until recently, arguably, happened to homosexuals without the overtness. I will take no wife. They're not allowed to marry. I will father no children. They're not allowed to adopt. And forced to placate themselves before the people that hold them as lesser. To say that it can't be a public thing. If you get caught, you're going to be in trouble. And I know that it's gone back and forth in different societies, and some of the best societies ever have been completely fine with it. But in general, it's not till recently we've publicly recognized democratic civil rights regarding sexual preference. And this guy went through shit before it, and then they carved a fucking thing in his head, and that happened before he was going to die. It wasn't just that he was going to die shortly. They cut a fucking star into his head, then he gets killed. That's what this show is willing to do, and it meant as much as it would have had they not been exploded afterwards. But they're all gone now, and isn't that just perfect for the faith to be the reason they didn't get out? You just gotta believe, blind faith. And Marjorie's cool and collected, despite her brother being fucking. She loves her brother, but she knows we're just inches away. Just let them carve his fucking face, and I can get him the hell out of here. Even her father is like disgusted, and what a horrible, quick sound, but that hurt. Knowing that was his son, as much as a weird pussy he is, that was a fucking horrible feeling. And she's like, the faith is the way. But when it comes down to it, I had a little trouble following her conclusion that they had to get out of there, like something was going to happen. I had a little trouble following that, but with the exception of that tiny little leap in my mind, it's a perfect scene because she's like, oh, the faith, necessary to play along. But when it comes down, and I mean this sincerely, over half, in my opinion, religious people would do this. If they're following their particular predilections, if it came down to it, they say there's no atheists in foxholes, and I say there's no... you become more logical in those situations, or at least if you want to survive, you do. And it's not about, let's just sit down and pray. No, I'm going to fucking run from the guy with the machine gun. And she literally, like, at one point the last thing I think she says to him is, enough with the faith, something to that extent. We need to get out of here. And then the first thing she does is grab her brother, and they're all gone in a split fucking second. Lovely. Cersei's transition to Evil Queen was one of the most seamless character transitions that we have all been expecting, but it just, when it happened, it was like, this makes complete sense. It's what's been built to the whole time, and her personality transition went so smoothly right into it. It was fucking beautiful. And she's leading a kingdom of fear. If Dany walked into town right now and everybody was in the public space and somebody went, who here wants Cersei? These are your two options. Who here wants Cersei as your queen? Dead silence. Who here wants Dany as your queen? Uproar. Ridiculous. There's going to be no fight for that, but that's going to be part of the politics, and the battles that come are going to be separate from the actual throne. Her just cannot fuck it. It was like butter, her transition, and she looked lovely doing it. And like I mentioned earlier, Jaime's on the cusp of realizing this is not what I want out of life. I don't want to be the man people think I am, and she is not my answer and to anything. So I am a huge proponent, and it's frequently on my mind how hard children have it. And I don't just mean children that are being raped or starved to death in Africa. I mean the mentality of a child. It is really easy to be hurt very hard, to be anxious, to feel like the world's on your shoulders, to consider suicide as a legitimate alternative. And I would be surprised if less than 70% of the population did not go through at least those kind of thoughts. I don't necessarily mean just suicidal. I mean that this isn't worth it, and I don't mean killing yourself. Tommen is 8 or 9 in the books at this point, and he's going to do that, in my opinion, in the books. But he's 8 or 9, and I don't have the statistics in front of me, but from personal opinion, I would bet that's about the right age for people to start. I'd say 8 to 11 is probably the gap where most kids do it. High school is probably 2. And maybe I'm wrong on that, just where I'm coming from. But anyway, he's going to fucking do that. And his mom did that to him. She has no idea that she did it to him. It's not affecting her. But she did that to him because she wanted what she wanted, not what he wanted. That said, and Charlie asked something before he left, which I want to get at. He asked basically, is Cersei mad? I am of the opinion that the reason we got the whole, when it comes to a Targaryen, you flip a coin, is because Martin is intentionally making the Targaryens dichotomies. Cersei and Jaime are melded together and will never be permanently separate, maybe physically, but not mentally. They will always be a part of each other. Came into this world, will go out together. As Jaime is going to try to make himself better, Cersei has accepted her. She's a selfish nihilist. Nothing matters. I want what I want, and I'll get it. And she's gotten it. It worked. She won against Marjorie, and that was a really sad thing. But Jaime, on the other hand, is going to try to improve himself. That's the thing. She's not mad. It's calculated. The madness, the evil aspect of her queenship came from losing the only thing she thought she cared about, and I'm not sure she ever really cared about him except as extensions of herself. But there's nothing left. She wants what she wants. She'll take it if she can. Fuck it. If I'm going to die, what's left? And one more reason for her to try to hurt Jaime near the end, if he's all that's left. Because when he walks into that throne room, this is exactly a mirroring of when he walks into her bedroom without a hand. He walks into her bedroom without a hand. She says, oh my God, he's back, and then thinks, well, I can't use him like I could. He's not whole. He's different. And he walks into there and thinks, this is what I always told her we wanted. But this is not what I want. I don't want the fucking throne. I don't want the throne. I had a chance to take it before when Ned walked into the room. I don't want it. And she shouldn't have it either. And I guarantee you she did some horrible things to get where she is, and all my children are dead, and he's going to think she had something to do with it, at least forcing Tommen into that. Lancel's eyes, there's so much to say, I apologize about this. Lancel's eyes, when the fire and the green, that was intentionally done to mirror the White Walkers. Absolutely, 100%. The eyes, foggy green fire across them. It's just like the ice of the whites. It was meant to be intentional. So, dig this. Fire is the purest death because there's no coming back. Whether there's any soul or consciousness or mentality that comes back in a white, it is still some kind of resurrection. And same thing with Jon, Lady Stoneheart, Bear Dondarrion. They're all resurrections of a certain point. Even Drogon. Drogo, excuse me, who comes back without really a thought process. That's coming back, right? It's a kind of life. It's not life. It's not consciousness. It's not free will. It's a kind of life, like a white. It's not really anything. It's a shell. Fire is the purest death because it's the end. Guaranteed end. Who's the person who can't burn? Might never could potentially not have an end. If melded with resurrection. But add to that if fire is the purest death because it guarantees no afterlife in one form or another, no afterlife, isn't it ironic that it's the faith militant that gets burnt to shit in this scene? They all think there's going to be an afterlife. They're building for it. There's a better place, a way for all of us, and all of them are rid of any potential afterlife. All gone. Fire is the purest death. Littlefinger, I mentioned this earlier, so I'm just going to repeat it. Varys says of Littlefinger he would burn the world to the ground if it meant he could be king of the ashes. That's exactly what Cersei did in this episode. There's nothing left at King's Landing. A bunch of the people have been killed because of that explosion, and do you think she gives a flying fuck about any of them? These people are scared and hungry. War's decimated them. She's not going to have any idea of economics or bringing food in or guaranteeing these people's safety. They fear her, which is why you had all those people armed and lined the fuck up. She's an evil person. She's a fascist dictator, and she doesn't give a fuck about the people. They are only subservient in as far as her power extends. As soon as she loses it, they will destroy her. I like to say that, as we talked about with everything, that no one is necessarily free from death. Everybody can die in this, and multiple people at once, as we've learned from the Red Wedding and the explosion of the Sept of Baelor. Another thing we've learned in this show is that you can't trust anybody. Sansa even lies to Jon. You can't trust anybody, even children. And that's really the reason the birds are important, because you can't even trust children in this world. And in a way, that's true. I mean, they say you got to watch your mouth around your kids because they'll tell everybody everything. So, in the same way that Cersei and I'm not sure how far I got in this. I mentioned earlier that Cersei and Jaime are two sides of the same coin. One wants to make himself better. The other one doesn't give a fuck and wants to make himself. One seems mad. One seems good. In the same way, Jon and Dany are dichotomies because one is going to choose the Night King, the other one's not, basically, and whatever that mentality comes from. But regarding Cersei and Aerys, I think this episode, for me, solidify that Cersei and Jaime are Aerys's kids. She burned the fucking place to the ground. She tortured Unella, which, by the way, the torture of Unella is, to me, almost without a doubt, the Mountain was sitting there to repeatedly rape her. That is what that scene's about. It's why Cersei brushed her thigh, and it's something that won't hurt her in a way that prevents her from continuing to live. She's not going to get an infection, for the most part. She's not going to get an infection. She's not going to lose limbs, and it will destroy. It's shame. And there's an interview with Cersei that I've got in the description where she basically says that it was actually supposed to be a lot more morbid, and they decided they couldn't do it. It would be too morbid. Fucking Game of Thrones. So, but in my opinion, that's what was going to happen. He's going to repeatedly and eternally rape her, which is just fucking horrible. Here's the mirroring. Unella is going to be raped for the rest of her life by this guy, Robert Strong, somebody who doesn't care about her, who's way too big for her, but who she has no choice. That's Cersei. Cersei was married to Robert Baratheon and was practically raped her entire life. That's not true because she didn't want to, but marriage behooved her to participate in one form or another, which is why she says she licked his little princes off her fingers. But it's a manipulation. It's not desire. It's adapting to your circumstance. It's not an intentional choice. She also says even confession feels good under the right circumstances. It's all. I mentioned this in a previous episode. Confessions to yourself, confessions to other people. You have to confess things to yourself in order to improve yourself. But it doesn't mean anything if you're not willing to improve or do better. We all do our duty when there's no cost to us. Honor comes easy then. Well, when you're not being held accountable for your actions, people will do some fucked up shit. Also, she says, "This is your god now," in reference to Robert Strong. By the way, apparently, at least in the show, Mom and I were completely wrong about Robb Stark's head being on his body. My mom thinks there may be a different situation. Maybe it'll be replaced later. I don't know. So one more thing I wanted to add. So I mentioned earlier that this is the last thing. Maester Pycelle dies, and they say that Qyburn tells him, I'm sorry, I didn't want to do this, but in order for the new to come to fruition, the old has to be put at peace. And then Sam joins the Citadel. Well, this is an evolution from this. First of all, he's manipulative, but it was the alchemists before it was the Maesters. It's about increasing knowledge and increasing availability to everybody, and but to gain respect, science is not always throughout history been treated as a good thing. It's often treated as disproving the people in power, arguing with the people in power. So in order to get it to the top, in a way, in a lot of different times, and I don't have examples, but I'm certain it happens, science had to be manipulative in order to get power. Which is what Qyburn's basically done. He's doing fucked up shit, but he's progressing science. I actually read recently that the stuff that the experiments that were done by the Nazis really weren't. I was taught really that there were some things learned from them, but from what I've understood, the way the studies were done is they weren't valid results. So there was nothing you could do about this. There was torture, manipulation involved. It wasn't results. There really was nothing they could get from any of it. And I'm sorry I'm shaking my camera. All right, I'm going to move on for now. I'm sure I'll have something to say after everybody else goes. Who wants to go next? Maester Payne, LaDonna? Or Mama? Maester Payne, why don't you go?
Sure thing. Sorry. First of all, that mirroring you said about Robert and Cersei and Robert Strong, fucking brilliant. That's great. Absolutely, fully on board with that. I also want to acknowledge TeeBaby's point of Cersei implanting the suicide into the mind. That's fucking genius too. My greatest thing about the explosion and the trial is watching them all shuffle in there. Kind of this blinded by faith aspect, and then having Marjorie speak out and say, "We have to get out of here, we have to get out of here," but still being trapped by the faith militant in there. It's a metaphor for being trapped by your faith, not being able to escape it, not being able to accept reason from somebody else trying to talk to you and say something's wrong, something's different about this. And they die for it. They get fucking lit up. It's a fucking brilliant metaphor. I sent you in our Facebook Hangout page an image of the columns, but I just thought it was there. It is a great. So throughout this season, we've had the crown and the faith described as the two columns of humanity or society or whatever, and that's it. Being utterly destroyed at Cersei's hand, which is fucking great. So I thought that was brilliant that they framed it like that. It was one of the best things I've seen probably this season, is that shot right there. That's my TV too. Anyways, you can take that off. You were talking about Loras and what he had to go through. I thought it was very interesting at the beginning of these scenes, seeing everybody get dressed up essentially for their death. We watched them getting dressed in their funeral clothes, but Loras is sitting there shivering and shaking, and I don't think it's because of the situation it's in. It's because of what he's forcing himself to do to get out of it, and I thought that was kind of pretty powerful as well. You mentioned the faith has been destroyed, and now Cersei is ruling with fear. So we have faith gone now, and all we have left is fear in King's Landing, which is powerful as well. Cersei obviously doesn't give a shit what the history books are going to say about her. She's all about now, and whatever she can get, she doesn't care about afterwards. Sorry, I got notes scrambled all over here. Jaime showing up in King's Landing is kind of powerful too. He actually witnesses Cersei doing what he dishonored himself to prevent. His name is forever tainted because he killed Aerys to prevent exactly what his sister just fucking did, which that's going to be awesome to see rectified next season. Qyburn, or not Qyburn, but Pycelle and Lancel following the little birds, just having them whisper in his ears and just trail off to their own fucking dooms is, I'll equate it a different way, and that's just respective theories or things like that. Just following nothing in particular, just somebody says something to you and you blindly chase after it and you die for it, which is powerful as well. I do wonder if Tommen may have been attempting to punish Cersei by killing himself. It was at his final sort of dig at his mom by jumping out the window. I don't know. I guarantee, obviously he's heartbroken about a number of things, but I'd like to think that he had one last shot and he tried to hurt her when he was killing himself. Move on to somebody else if you can, because I got to make sense of my notes, but I think I hit most of my points here, but I do know I have a few more. I just got to figure out where they are. So if Claire wants to go, or LaDonna. LaDonna?
Okay. Well, I think what all of you said was great. I do want to say, as I started this discussion 3 hours ago, the music brought us in like a small leitmotif, and it brought us in riding its back as the music went from piano to organ, and as Claire had said, it was like there was some dissonance between the chords, which throws us off kilter and makes us feel like something bad's going to happen. It's like being a master of a horror movie where the music actually helps us to get into the mood of it. And it was a funereal mood from the very beginning. Yes, people were dressing for what we now know was the end of their lives. I thought these scenes were so very Shakespearean that it was really incredible. And if I could mention a few things, with respect to the Cersei scenes, I think we have to look at Cersei as having a number of like really bad personality disorders and political ambitions that are not really for anybody but herself. We know that she's a narcissist. We know that she only cares about herself. Other people are only extensions of herself. No, go out and come back in. You sound like a robot. We know that Cersei, as a narcissist, only uses people as extensions of herself. They don't have real emotional connections between she and her, even her children. Yeah, she loves them, but not in a healthy way. She loves them in how they can get her where she's going to go. She also, I believe, is a bit of an anarchist. I mean, she really is going to do whatever it takes. She doesn't really believe in anything. And as to the, and of course there's a parallel between Tywin here with her, because, you know, somebody asked her, do you believe in, did Tywin believe in the gods? And she's like, well, he doesn't really like them, but yeah, he kind of believes in them. Getting back to the scene, this was the most Shakespearean episode that we have ever had in Game of Thrones, and there have been plenty of Shakespearean references or nods. We've got the scene of Cersei standing at the pillars looking out, and if you notice after the explosion, she has that brief wisp of hair that moves on her head from the impact of the explosion, and there are a couple of ashes that come down in front of her. that is intentional on the part of the director and cinematographer. I think it means she is the Queen of the Ashes. As to whether or not there will be another wildfire scene, yeah, I think so. What she did was effectively take out the lords and ladies. Yeah, she got some tangential peasants that were on the side when the wildfire and bell. What a great scene with that bell flying through. And then the wildfire, it was like a nuclear explosion. Yeah, she got some of the peasants, but she's got a vendetta against those peasants who shat on her and exposed themselves to her and all that stuff during her walk of shame. She's getting them too. And we've had plenty of foreshadowing in the books that there was wildfire not just under the Sept of Baelor, but everywhere, including the throne room. So we're going to see a secondary explosion, and it probably won't come until Dany invades, okay? So believe me, Cersei's not over. Incredible to see her take that queenship. Let me talk about Shakespearean references just a bit. It almost was like she did a blood sacrifice with fire. She just did it in a huger and bad intentional way. But as to Shakespeare, I want to quote you a couple of things that come from Macbeth, if I might, and I'll make this short and sweet. But in Lady Macbeth, there is a scene where she says, "Unsex me," meaning that she, and I think Cersei has, and it absolutely means that she wanted to be a man. She wanted to be Jaime. Not that she's not a woman, not that she's like, you know, transgendered or anything. She wanted to be able to have the power that males have in this world. She resented Jaime for it, and he couldn't help it, but she resented him for it. In Lady Macbeth, what that essentially means is to please put me in a position where I can be like a man, unsex me. She also says, and I'm going to quote this, this is from Lady Macbeth, "The raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here, and fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty." Tell me that's not Cersei. She also says something about the milk of human kindness, at which she doesn't have any of. She is absolutely devoid of it. She always has been. And I'm going to give you some examples of this. This is not a woman who just changed, although, James, I think you're absolutely right. The transition to show that was as smooth as butter. Huh?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Well, James,
forever. Go ahead.
James was right as to how smooth it was like butter when we saw her kind of transition. It's always been there, but now we saw it very subtly. But I want to talk to you about this particular portion of this. When Cersei was young, this is not a change. This is just Cersei coming out as she has been. And we've seen a little bit in the books, but I want to lay it out for people who've not read the books. We've seen it in the show a little bit. From the moment that her mother died, and we don't know, but she might have been this way before, but when her mother died, Cersei literally would torture Tyrion in his crib. We heard a little bit of it. She would twist his penis so much that Jaime had to go in and intervene and say, "Stop doing it to him. Stop, please." Jaime's been Jaime forever. He's just been put upon by her. And a twin, it's horrible. Not long after that, you know, when she goes to Maggie the Frog, she actually throws her friend down a well so that she can't marry Jaime because she showed an interest in Jaime. Cersei wants to keep her claws in Jaime forever, to use him like a pawn. She also, in the show, they left out throwing her friend down the well so far, but in the show, when she comes to Tyrion, when he's locked in after Blackwater and thinks she's going to kill him, he says to her, "You beat a servant girl so badly for stealing a necklace that you blinded her." And she says, "She never stole from me again." This woman has been an incredible, she's not psychotic. And Charlie said, is she mad? No, it depends on what your definition of madness is. There are plenty of criminal minds out there that you might not think are mad. And you know, the definition of madness is that you don't know the difference of right from wrong. She knows exactly what the difference is, and we saw it in the show. She said, I wish I could have been a better person. I wish I could have been as good as Myrcella. She knows she's not good, and she still keeps on doing these things because, as she said to Septa Unella, I do it because it feels good. Sylvia Plath had a great poem that says, I do it until it feels good. I mean, this is Cersei. Yeah, I expected that scene. Did I expect her to be queen so soon? No. But again, they're racing through. But we all knew pretty much her goal was to get her ass on that throne. And when the scene with her and Qyburn about what she's going to do with Tommen, boy, that's a mother crying over a child. Burn him. Put his ashes under the scepter baler with Tywin. She doesn't care. I don't know if that child is going to kill himself in the books. I think it might go down a different way. But because he was older and really had a true relationship with Marjorie, I think this was the appropriate way to go. Was he doing it despite his mother? I don't really think so. Not in the show anyway. I think that it was more powerlessness and existential angst. And he said, where can I go from here? Nowhere but down. And boy, did he down himself. I want to point out in this scene when the explosion takes place, and I don't want to go into great detail about all the scenes because all of us know they were so incredibly and epically seen together with art, music, drama, theater. It was just perfection. Really, none of us, I think, will ever see something so seamlessly done. It was perfection. But when we see that scene in the set, and Marjorie, who, by the way, anybody in the chat who's saying Marjorie was a little less cruel than Cersei, no, Marjorie was a decent person. She could have been a good queen. She was not like Cersei. She had to be cunning because she was dealing with someone like that, just like Sansa's going to have to, but she was not a bad person. But when we see that scene where the explosion's coming and you hear the rumbling, if you'll go back and look at it, she's holding on to Loras. And right when the explosion starts, they fall. The floor falls out from them, and you see it with her. And she and Loras start falling, the fall of a queen. And then we see the High Sparrow, who obviously is not Helen Reed, so anybody who said I was wrong, you're right, he's not Helen Reed. I really hoped he would, but it obviously wasn't it. So he's not. Helen's out there somewhere. So when he explodes, you actually do see some of his skin melting off before the final explosion. Brilliantly done. And then they pull back and the rest of the floor collapses, which was right next to Marjorie. It was beautifully done. Jaime. I really love Jaime. I think Martin did an incredible character arc with him. When he's looking at her on that throne, I don't know that he knows how Tommen went out yet. I don't know. We don't know. We haven't seen those scenes yet. But boy, oh boy, this is the end of Jaime and Cersei. So if I can look back at my notes for 1 second, I think I have covered it. But I just want to make sure. Also, with respect to the Shakespearean things, when that candle was going out, all I was thinking about was that scene, I think it was from Hamlet, that was out, brief candle. You know, these people worked so hard to get to where they were. Must have Macbeth, excuse me. They worked so hard to get where they were going, and it was all for nothing. What does it say? It's full of sound and fury and signifying nothing. Oh my God. Epic. This was a masterpiece. Movies, theater, TV. It was a masterpiece.
Wonderful. All right. The infamous Clare Gray.
Next time, can I please?
May I say one last thing?
You got an echo, number one, and number two, we got to be careful not to interrupt. Go ahead, Mama. I'm
sorry, Claire. I just wanted to say the last thing. I love the wine boarding of Septa Unella. And, you know, the mountain's just going to rape her. And, James, you're wrong. Women can get infections from that. But, no, he's going to rape her like he did Elia Martell over and over again. But she's not going for a long, long time. And, no, they're not going to take her eyes out because Cersei wants her to see everything, including her smiling face down at her.
Yeah, thanks. Claire?
Okay, what I was saying is, can I please not go after Mama LaDonna next time? Because A, she's just really scared me, and B, she always gives me far too much to think about with what she's saying, and then I completely forget what I was going to say. So this might be a bit random and all over the place, but I'm going to try to channel my inner TeeBaby. And just ask everybody to cast their minds back to the very opening scene of this episode. And even before we get to the music, the bells are chiming throughout King's Landing from the Sept of Baelor. Now, think about Cersei and Cersei's mindset. So she's calculated this. This is the big plan. This is going to solve all of her shitty problems that she's had with the faith, with the Tyrells, with everyone. So she needs some kind of signal to tell her, and everything that happens up until then is very deliberate and calculated. She's getting dressed. She knows we don't quite know, although we sort of know something weird's happening, and it's all the music's making us feel very uncomfortable. But that, when I believe that when the bell sounded, that was Cersei's signal for knowing that those candles were lit. And she then knew that it took the time to burn down the candles, which is why she was getting herself ready very deliberately. She must have been counting the seconds down in her head. How long does it take those candles to burn down? Because that was the signal, I'm certain of it. And as I said before, she was in her own Tower of Joy. There was something very, yes, Shakespearean. The music was very atmospheric. Weirdly, to me, there was something very kind of Da Vinci Code about those initial scenes, and I think it's because of the Faith Militant, who creeped the shit out of me. They did in that episode when they first appeared last season, when they were running down the steps. Really quite scary, and I think it's because they remind me in relation to the Da Vinci Code of Opus Dei, and you can see them there with the chains and the metal chalice, and they're all stood up, just really intimidating and scary, and extreme religion always gives me that kind of reaction, obviously. The opulence of the statues and the sheer magnitude and size of them, of the seven, inside that theatre, which was the Sept, with the music and everything and the minimal dialogue. Sorry if I'm completely over-explaining this, but it was just magnificent, those initial scenes. I thought that Lancel, I don't know why I thought this, but I thought the thing that will make Jaime turn against Cersei, because I think that is the next big thing, I completely agree with LaDonna, I thought at some point he would confess to Jaime about sleeping with Cersei, and that's why Jaime would kind of turn on Cersei. Little did I know that it was going to be something much bigger than that, and actually what Jaime sees is the complete manifestation of his sister, who he loves, executing in a calculated way his worst nightmare, effectively kingslaying their own son. And you know, Walder Frey mentioned it earlier on about not killing a son, it'll give the family a bad name. The High Sparrow, we never got any kind of resolution really about who he was, and he was quite a big character in this season, and his acting was superb. Jonathan Pryce, the sneering that we get when he's reacting to Loras giving himself over to the faith. I just felt there was a little bit more left there to the High Sparrow, that we could have some kind of... Barbara Revel, by the way, in the comments a while ago was saying, why didn't the High Sparrow have the thing on his head? You know, he was spared that somehow. And maybe it was because he was the figurehead or whatever, but it's just we never quite found out who is the High Sparrow, and I know that we had lots of speculation about that. Scepter Unella, I thought the only thing I would say, in addition to what everybody else has said, is I thought it was interesting when Cersei closed the door on that scene, and you can hear the scepter shrieking in the background, and she just shuts the door, and then she shuts that little window in the door, and that just completely mirrors season 5 when Cersei is seized and thrown into the cells, and it's Scepter Unella who shuts the door and closes the window. So that kind of gave me the chills a little bit. I completely agree with what James is saying about Tommen, and I think it's quite nasty when people are saying things like, you know, he's weak, just get rid of him, he was a clueless kid, and, you know, it's just, he was a traumatized child, and he was manipulated and stretched into so many different places. And he also, whether it was a voluntary thing or whether he was forced to, but he accepted this faith, he believed it in his very innocent, naive mind, and he saw it all blow up in front of him, including his wife who he loved. And I think that just on reflection for me, Tommen was just too innocent for this world, and I think that's the route that he took. Poor Tommen. I thought that Cersei knew, she could see this prophecy unfolding. I think she'd already given up on Tommen, and when she said those words, burn him, bury his ashes, when Qyburn was asking what about the funeral arrangements, considering the sept isn't there anymore, I think that when she said burn him, bury his ashes, what she was actually saying to herself was, prophecy ended, all my children have gone, just burn him, bury him, it was almost kind of like, just get rid of that prophecy, it's gone, let me move on to the next phase. In answer to Charlie's question, is Cersei mad? I think a lot of people in the comments are saying things like she's a sociopath. Possibly. I do think that she is calculated, but she's consistently getting it wrong throughout this saga, and she's constantly taking the wrong route. And don't forget that the whole mess with the faith is Cersei's fault in the first place. So, you know, she's basically just trying to very clumsily, but effectively, you know, we can admit to that. But yeah, so that's let me see what else I've got here. Just questioning about how did she suddenly become first of her name? By what right did she become first of her name? But then again, I remember that George R.R. Martin has said previously that many people will sit the Iron Throne before the end of the story. I don't think she's going to be there for very long. I think she'd just be swatted away like a fly when Daenerys arrives. And the only other thing to say was about the Pycelle scene and the little birding. Goosebumps, haunting, the music, just everything about it, even though you really want Pycelle to kind of get it, when the blood's spurting out and against his white beard and everything, it's just horrific. It's absolutely horrific. And so it kind of borders on the cusp of likes and dislikes for me, because it had extreme reaction with the goosebumps, but just a horrible scene. And yeah, magnificent with the wildfire, that's all I'll say. Visually magnificent. I was listening to somebody else's podcast the other day saying that when everybody's finished watching Game of Thrones and reading A Song of Ice and Fire and the story's done and gone and we've all forgotten about it, we will remember that particular episode and that particular scene, the visual impact of it, absolutely. Yeah, and that's me done. Thank you.
Can I do one thing in defense of Cersei? She did try to present alternatives. This wasn't her first course of action. She went to Lena to try to unite with her against the faith, and Lena refused her, and Lena essentially put this idea in Cersei's head by saying, what are you going to do, kill all of us? The answer was yes, but she did have other options, and she tried to get people to go along with her. She was kind of forced to this, so I'm not saying that she's not mad. She's calculating, and she was driven to this result, this action, against her other course of action that she wanted to pursue. That's all I'm going to add. And I did kind of fall in love with Cersei this episode too. It'll pass, but I like the fact that she took power and she's set herself on that Iron Throne. I kind of admire her for that.
And that is exactly why this series and the television show are so important to the future. And I'm biased beyond belief, but they care to feel empathy for a stereotypical evil queen. So she fell into this stereotype. She was not. Her motivations make complete sense, but if we were to have joined this story right at this point, she'd be an evil queen. Straight up, straightforward, evil queen. And we pulled for her in a strange way. We pulled for her. We hate the fucking faith. We hate the way that no one's really standing up to the people. It's supposed to be some kind of equal playing field, and we'll manipulate them. And it's her fucking fault. She started it. But we still pull for her. We all make mistakes. Mama, I know you're raring to go.
No, not really. But, I mean, again, I think Martin is playing on this. This is why people need to be careful of career criminals. When they talk to you about all the sad things that happen to them in their lives, yeah, it probably did happen. But ultimately, you can't trust them. I mean, I'm going to go back to Godwin's Law and go back to Hitler. I mean, yeah, we know where he came from. We know he's had a terrible family. He was conflicted in a lot of different ways. But could anybody really negotiate with him? And MP, you're right. And you're right. She did offer some choices. But would you negotiate with Cersei? I mean, she is all about Cersei. She'll negotiate with you for a moment, but she'll cut your head off as soon as you turn around. So it's a sad thing. We know where she came from. We know why she does things. And Martin is brilliant at getting into the psychology of the mind. But it doesn't make them ultimately redeemable. So.
Oh, no. I fully intend my crush on Cersei to pass first episode next season, but I'm in love with her at the moment. Absolutely.
I clapped too when she took the throne because it was played so brilliantly, but so, this is Maleficent on the throne, and I don't know if any of you saw that. It wasn't a particularly great movie, but it gave you the backstory. You knew where she came from, and she did have a bit of a heart, but she was Maleficent, and holy shit. Cersei, she's going to go to Harrenhal with Littlefingers, and they're going to be King and Queen of the Ashes. I'm telling you, that place has been burned before. It's going to get burned again.
Who else wants to add something? I did want to say Go ahead, Claire.
I just want to counter Maester Payne's crush on Cersei by saying, I've got a little tiny bit of something for Qyburn.
So do I. Trust me. I love fucking Qyburn. He's fucking great.
I love him. I've loved him ever since when Cersei in the books has given her one of her handmaidens to him, and she needs her later. And she goes, I need Lady Felice Stokeworth. Will you bring her back up? And he goes, I don't think that's a good idea. And she's like, why not? And he goes, well, she can't feed herself anymore.
Yeah. They said, what did you say? A little bit. You've got a little thing for Qyburn. He's willing to take any piece you're willing to give for the experiments. I did want to say there's a link in the description for Season 1 comparisons. As somebody wrote a bunch of comparisons between how the last couple episodes, the whole season of the first season went, and in what appear to be intentional mirrorings in this season. So I checked that out. All right. Anybody else? Thank y'all for being here. I know it was a short council, but this was actually really technical and complex, and it was fan-fucking-tastic having both of you on. It's been a while since we had both of you on. Thank y'all for both being here, sincerely. I love y'all.
Love you.
All right, I'll put up that Nice King picture one more time, and we can call it a day.
I love you, darling.
Love you too, man.
Nominate Qyburn for the most interesting man in the world for the next campaign, by the way.
I honestly don't have any problem pulling for Qyburn. I know he's doing fucked up shit, and my issue with him is he's torturing people who can't speak for themselves, basically. But he's pursuing science. He wants to learn more things. I can't blame him for that one aspect of what he's doing. And if it means having to manipulate others for power in order to do it, so be it. All right. Thank y'all all for watching. Y'all have a fantastic night.
Cheers, guys. See you soon.
Thanks for watching, folks. We love y'all. Mwah. Good night, folks.